Chapter 1146. By the time they left Rejuvenation Valley, night had already fallen and the lights in Macho City were gradually becoming brighter. Zhang Xiaohua stood in midair with her hands behind her back. She did not release her divine sense and only used her naked eyes to look down. She saw that in Macho City, every household was lit up with lights. The surface of Macho Lake reflected the surrounding lights and the night sky that had yet to be revealed. It was even more starry than the real night sky. This place, why is it so deserted? Could it be that something is wrong? Zhang Xiaohua was admiring the view when she suddenly noticed that on the west side of Macho Lake, there was a large area. It was completely dark and there were no lights. It was completely different from the surrounding lights. If it was a normal day, Zhang Xiaohua might not have noticed it. However, between the clouds and the water, Bai Yanqiu's palace was dark at night. Zhang Xiaohua was able to recognize it easily and gain a lot of benefits from it. How could he not remember? Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and scanned the area. Then he frowned. This area was a huge manor. It was close to the Sorrowless Lake. Although most of the area was dark and there were no traces of people, there were still many people living around the manor. Moreover, there were many men in martial attire around the manor. They held lanterns in their hands and were constantly on duty. I'm afraid this is the manner of an official. Zhang Xiaohua had just thought of this when another thought popped up. That day when I came to Macho City with my dream, it seems that the dream appeared near this manor. Could it be the incense cult in Macho City? At this moment, a black shadow escaped from the manor in a panic from the southern side of the manor. Not far behind him were two men in martial arts attire. One of them held a torch, while the other held a steel saber. They were hot on his heels. Zhang Xiaohua saw the black shadow in front of her and couldn't help but laugh. People often wear out iron shoes, but still can't find you. I cast a wide net in Macho City, but still couldn't find you. I actually met you here today. Wasn't the black shadow in front the worker of the storm carriage company? Judging from the way he fled, he seemed to be quite familiar with the surrounding terrain. However, the two people who were chasing after him were obviously much more skilled than the shop assistant. After they left the manor, they threw away their torches and focused on chasing after him. By the time Zhang Xiaohua had flown behind them, the shop assistant had already been sandwiched between the two of them. You little thief, why aren't you surrendering? A Chinese character shouted with a sinister smile. Heroes, please spare my life. I was just short of some money and wanted to steal some things from your residence. But I didn't get anything. Please spare me. The shop assistant was still arguing, but his eyes were looking around and his feet didn't stop. With such qing gong, how could you be an ordinary thief? Don't bully me because I can't see. A man said angrily. The other man continued. Yixiang Manor is famous in Macho City. There isn't a single ruffian in the vicinity who would believe your words. Seeing that the shop assistant was getting closer, one of the men raised a steel knife and laughed sinisterly. Since brother isn't willing to stop, then I'll let you bleed first. However, just as the steel knife was about to fall, a black shadow descended from the sky and grabbed the shop assistant's neck. With a light lift, the man's steel knife fell into the air. The black shadow didn't stop and hovered about 10 feet above the ground. With the shop assistant's body in his hand, he flew far away in the blink of an eye like a nighthawk. When the two men saw this, they couldn't help but be stunned. They stopped in their tracks and looked at each other, their eyes filled with horror. Big brother, I didn't see wrongly, right? Is that someone from the immortal Tao? Brother, no, you didn't see wrongly, that's right. The other stuttered and shrunk his neck. Brother, let's hurry back and report this matter to the steward. This thief is not from anywhere. Not only did he sneak into our Yixiang Manor at night, he even had an expert from the immortal Tao to receive him. This matter is serious. The two men turned around and left even faster than when they were chasing after the shop assistant. As for the shop assistant, he had escaped from death and was overjoyed. His body was in midair and the night wind blew gently. He almost suspected that he was in a dream. That shop assistant was also clever and knew that it was not the right time to speak. He waited for the expert from the immortal Tao to descend from the sky and stop at a secluded place before turning around. Without looking carefully, he bowed and said, "Immortal Elder, thank you for saving my life." After a few kowtows, he offered his gratitude. That person laughed coldly and didn't reply. When the shop assistant heard this, he unconsciously raised his head and probed. This disciple is a subordinate disciple of Qing Yanling in Mocho City. I don't know which elder of the immortal Tao is. This last surprised was when he saw the face of the person who came. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He saw that the face was very young, only about 16 years old. However, the figure was thin and tall, taller than the shop assistant by a head. Wasn't that the person he had seen before at the storm carriage company? In an instant, the shop assistant's back was covered in sweat. "What, you recognized I?" The person who came was indeed Zhang Xiaohua. Her eyes were full of sarcasm as she said coldly, "Immortal Elder, I have eyes but failed to see. I don't know." The shop assistant was incoherent and didn't know what to say. Was there a need to say this? He had reported the situation of this immortal elder's family having excess wealth, and he himself knew the methods of the Qing Yanling Mo. Was there a need to ask the reason why this immortal elder came to find him now? "Immortal Elder, please spare my life. Please spare my life. These are the orders of the owner. I'm only following orders." The shop assistant fell to the ground and begged. "Your so-called owner has already died in Ai's hands. You don't have to accuse me. You have to know the consequences of what you have done." Zhang Xiaohua didn't waste time with him. She pointed her finger and used bewitching finger to hit the acupoint at the back of the shop assistant's head. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with anger. She thought to herself, this Qing Yanling Mo is really despicable. Who knows how many innocent lives it has taken? It's a pity that I don't have the means to get rid of it one by one. Oh, right, the place you went to just now. Is it the manor of the fragrant cult? Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought. Yes, this Yixiang Mountain Manor is the manor of the famous martial arts family, the Gu family. Secretly, it is the base of the fragrant cult in Mocho City. It has been many years. This is what I know from the Banner Lord. Why did you go to the Yixiang Mountain Manor? The Banner Lord seems to be doing something to the Yixiang Mountain Manor. I was just a scout to find out the actual situation. All right, tell me the location of your Banner Lord. The shop assistant told Zhang Xiaohua what she wanted to know very clearly. After he finished, Zhang Xiaohua said, although you didn't personally kill anyone, according to your information, who knows how many innocent people have died in the hands of others? You could be considered to have deserved more than death. Letting you leave unknowingly is also a reward for your cooperation just now. As she said this, she looked at the shop assistant's blank expression. Zhang Xiaohua sighed slightly in her heart. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the shop assistant's neck. With a slight force, a kacha sound was heard. A stream of blood flowed out from the corner of the shop assistant's mouth. His body went limp and fell to the ground dead. It's not that there won't be retribution. It's just that the time hasn't come. Once the time is up, retribution will come knocking. Zhang Xiaohua said in a low voice. She soared up again. Tonight, a secret branch of the Righteous Tao Alliance in Mocho City was unlucky. Before the shop assistant could reply, the god of pestilence came knocking on their door. A group of evil men whose hands were secretly stained with blood didn't even get to see the other party's face before their lives were reaped by a swift and fierce swordlight. In just the time it took to eat a meal, Zhang Xiaohua soared up from a small courtyard and was about to fly out of Mocho City. But just as she was about to leave the city, she changed her mind and her body flew diagonally towards Lingering Fragrance Manor. Lingering Fragrance Manor was the same as before. Most of the place was pitch black, but there were more disciples patrolling around the manor. It was as if they were guarding against the Righteous Tao Alliance. Zhang Xiaohua concealed her body and landed in a pavilion. Beside the pavilion was a small pond. The lotus flowers in the pond had already withered, and the lotus leaves were also somewhat withered. Looking at the water in the pond, it was flowing slightly. It was actually connected to the water of Emocho Lake. Is there anything strange about this place? When Peacock came to Emocho City, she had to make a trip here. When Ming came to Emocho City, she also had to make a trip here. Whatever they do, they can't talk about it outside. Today, I want to see if there's anything strange about this place. However, with Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense, the entire manor was very normal. It was no different from an ordinary manor. For a moment, there was no way for her to investigate. I forgot. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead and scolded herself. Didn't I just use the bewitching finger? Won't I know if I ask someone? Sure enough, in a moment, Zhang Xiaohua's body appeared in a garden. Looking at the embroidered building in Xiaohua's garden, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. So this ordinary embroidered building is the place where the inner disciples of Chanting Fragrance Cult have to pay their respects after arriving at Emocho City? Moreover, other than the inner disciples, all the disciples of Chanting Fragrance Cult are not allowed to come close to this garden. Even the old consecrator of Chanting Fragrance Cult can't come close. Isn't it just a portrait? Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and understood. Then, she walked slowly to the front of the embroidered building. Strangely, there was no fluctuation of primordial qi from inside to outside. It was very inconsistent with the status of Chanting Fragrance Cult as a big immortal sect. Something is strange. Something is strange. Zhang Xiaohua, who was used to dealing with all kinds of restrictions of Chanting Fragrance Cult, suspected that there was something strange about this embroidered building that she didn't know about. However, when she activated the Crimson Spirit Protection and walked safely into the first floor of the embroidered building without triggering any restrictions, she couldn't help but feel extremely strange. Taking out a luminous pearl from her arms, Zhang Xiaohua observed the first floor of the embroidered building again with the help of the luminous pearl's brilliance. The first floor of the embroidered building was similar to the first floor of the Misty School's Inheritance Pavilion. It was very clean and tidy. There was only a portrait hanging on the south wall. Under the portrait, there was a quaint table. On the table, there were 3 different styles of incense burners, each with several incense sticks. Chapter 1147. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohua's attention was drawn to the portrait. As Zhang Xiaohua expected, the portrait was of a lady dressed in palace attire. Her face was covered with a white veil, and she held a whip in her hand. The only difference was that the background of the lady had changed from a small bridge to a small pavilion. Beside the pavilion was a small lake that was as round as a crescent moon. Looking at the lake, it was similar to Maocho Lake. However, the lake was rippling with waves, and there was no embankment that divided the lake into 2. There was also no frown pagoda. This lady is always dressed in palace attire and a veil. Who knows if she is the lady I saw in the Jade Stone Hall? However, her attire and the whip in her hand have not changed. I think she must be the founder of the incense cult that one Wuxin mentioned, Senior Yu Ming Xin. If not for Senior Yu, all the female disciples of the incense cult who come to Maocho City would not need to pay their respects. But, Senior Yu, why is her portrait not on Lingering Fragrance Peak, but in Maocho City? Perhaps Maocho City was built by Senior Yu, and the legendary Lady of Maocho is Senior Yu? Could it be that the stories about Lady of Maocho are all true? But who is the legendary Yi Feng? Who is that monk called Xian Kong? Is he a monk from the Dalan Temple? Even if he is a monk from the Dalan Temple, he must be the founder of the Dalan Temple to have such a cultivation level, right? But then again, even the founder of the Dalan Temple could not have such a high cultivation level as Senior Yu. How could she suppress someone under Mao Cho Lake? Oh, right, under Mao Cho Lake. When Zhang Xiaohua thought of this, he released his divine sense and scanned the bottom of the Mao Cho Lake. He saw that the Frown Pagoda was buried deep into the lake, and he couldn't see the bottom. At the bottom of the pagoda, there was a restriction that emitted a weak Buddhist light. Zhang Xiaohua was taken aback when he saw the familiar restriction light. Could it be? Xian Kong is really a monk from the Dalan temple? But what is this? Within the Buddhist light, the faintly discernible seven-colored Buddhist lotus was surrounded by pitch-black threads. It was abnormally dazzling. Moreover, when Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness swept past the restriction, the black thread seemed to have a life of its own as it swayed slightly. As the black thread swayed, Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness seemed to be attracted and slowly shifted towards the Buddhist lotus. This is bad. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and didn't dare to look again. She immediately withdrew her divine sense and said to herself, Why is this Buddhist restriction so strange? However, the restriction went deep into the earth's core. With Zhang Xiaohua's current cultivation, it was impossible for him to escape so deep into the earth. Therefore, it was impossible for him to escape underground to observe carefully, let alone break the restriction. That restriction has the effect of isolating divine sense, and can even devour divine sense. It is impossible to know who is sealed within the restriction. Therefore, I can't determine whether the legendary carefree girl is Senior Yu. According to legend, as long as I can flood the Frown Tower, I can release the carefree girl from the tower. But ordinary means obviously can't do it. If I want to do it, I can only use the magical power of the immortal Tao. Not to mention that I don't have such means now. Even if I did, the so-called Xian Kong monk must have other means of defense on the Frown Tower. Forget it. Whether the carefree girl is Yu Mingxin or not is just a cause from tens of thousands of years ago. Who knows where the effect is? The carefree girl is a legend in Jing City, and she is very popular. Yu Mingxin is indeed the founder of the immortal Tao. Speaking of which, there is no connection between them. This effect will be left to the fated person of the incense cult. I have no interest in it. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua bowed deeply to the portrait, just like she did in the Misty School's Hall of Inheritance. Senior Yu, I have gained a lot from your incense cult. Let me bow to you as a token of my gratitude. Then, Zhang Xiaohua straightened up, looked at the ladder in the corner, and slowly walked up to the second floor of the embroidery tower. The second floor looked more like a woman's boudoir than the ground floor. However, it had been a long time, and there were no silk objects. There was a futon in the corner, a table in front of the window, a wooden box and a bronze mirror on the table, and a wooden cabinet against the wall. Zhang Xiaohua scanned the room with her divine sense and found that they were all ordinary objects. She didn't sense any fluctuation of vital energy. She even walked to the bronze mirror and looked at it again and again. She didn't sense any abnormalities like the clear sky mirror. This must be where Senior Yu lived in the early years. This table should be a dressing table. It is so simple and crude that there isn't even a stool. What's inside the box? Zhang Xiaohua thought, and opened the wooden box. It was similar to the dressing box that Zhang Xiaohua saw in Lady Aya's room in the small village. It was also empty except for a wooden hairpin at the bottom of the box. Strange? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised when he saw the wooden hairpin. Of course, he wasn't surprised that the hairpin was similar to Lady Aya's hairpin. He was surprised that the hairpin was exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Misty School has a jade slip that is exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Senior Yu's embroidery room has a wooden hairpin that is exactly the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. What does this mean? Zhang Xiaohua immediately let his imagination run wild. Could it be that the founder of Misty School, Yang Haoye, and the founder of Fragrance Sect, Yu Mingxin, have something that can't be explained clearly? But this kind of thing, why doesn't the founder of Shundao Sect, Wan Wuxi, know about it? Could it be that Senior Huan was deceived by the two of them? Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and thought for a while. He then took out the two purple phoenix hairpins and another jade slip that looked like a purple phoenix hairpin. He compared them with the wooden hairpin. Needless to say, it was obvious. The four of them were exactly the same except for the texture. This karma has already been buried in the river of karma. No one else will know about it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and was about to put away the purple phoenix hairpin. But at this moment, the wooden hairpin that looked like firewood suddenly emitted a weak wave of yuan qi. Although the wave was weak, it was extremely strong. It swept past the purple phoenix hairpin and covered Zhang Xiaohua's body. Then, a suction force rushed towards Zhang Xiaohua's Yuan palace. Zhang Xiaohua was caught off guard, and her divine sense was sucked towards the wooden hairpin. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She hurriedly activated Shun Traction. Her Dan heart spun rapidly, and the innate divine seal on it emitted a faint golden light to counteract the suction force. The suction force did not suck in her divine sense. Instead, it went downwards. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt the true qi in her meridians rushing towards the suction force. It was as if the true qi was going to burst out of her body. Are you kidding me? Senior you. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly activated the Carefree Heart Sutra and tried to channel her true qi into her meridians. But the Carefree Heart Sutra still had some effect at first. But as the suction force increased, the Carefree Heart Sutra gradually lost its effect. A portion of her true qi was sucked away by the suction force and channeled into the wooden hairpin. With the influx of true qi, the wooden hairpin gradually glowed. What an unreasonable bandit! Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a little annoyed at the sympathetic Yumingxin. Could it be that everyone from the immortal Tao is this tyrannical? At this time, the Carefree Heart Sutra had already lost its effect. Zhang Xiaohua's Zhen Qi became sluggish and was about to completely leave his body. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua heard the faint roar of a dragon. He felt as if all the meridians in his body had gained sentience. His entire meridians moved slightly, immediately canceling out that unparalleled suction force. That suction force was no longer able to suck away even half a strand of Zhen Qi. My meridians, when did they move? Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed but also shocked. Following the disappearance of the wooden hairpin's suction force, the brilliance of the wooden hairpin also stabilized. The brilliance overflowed a few times, and a foot-sized ball of light jumped out of the wooden hairpin. Within the ball of light was the appearance of a woman wearing palace robes and a veil. Nascent divinity projection. Zhang Xiaohua snorted, almost moaning. The ball of light flew in front of Zhang Xiaohua and stopped. It quietly floated there. After a moment, the woman in the ball of light spoke. Who are you? Why do you hold the purple phoenix hairpin of my incense cult, but not my incense cult's legacy heart sutra? Zhang Xiaohua secretly despised her. Please, senior you, this isn't the first time I've seen a primordial spirit projection. Even if I told you, would you be able to hear me? Don't be so arrogant, all right? Sure enough, the woman immediately laughed and said, However, I'm seeing you through a primordial spirit projection. Even if you told me, I wouldn't know. However, I'm still very curious. This purple phoenix hairpin is used by my incense cult's legacy heart sutra. You don't have my incense cult's legacy heart sutra, so how did you get it? Either my incense cult has already been destroyed and the purple phoenix hairpin has been obtained by another sect, or my incense cult has reorganized the cultivation world, and the legacy heart sutra on you is another sect's legacy heart sutra. Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and laughed. Both of these possibilities seem wrong. Your qi isn't from the incense cult, nor the Misty School, nor the Shindao sect, or the Great Forest Division. Presumably, another disciple from another cultivation world has come, or perhaps it's a legacy heart sutra from the ancient cultivation world. Hearing the woman say so much because of her qi, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but curl her lips. This woman, no matter if she's a village woman or an expert from the immortal Tao, they all have the same nature of gossip. I've asked too much. The woman seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. She covered her mouth and laughed. No matter what, you came to my embroidery room with 2 purple phoenix hairpins. It's fate that brought us together. Why should I ask so much? By the way, I'm the founder of the incense cult, Yumingxin. I don't know if your master has told you about me. Although Yumingxin was wearing a veil, her tone was very arrogant. She had actually obtained a beloved object from a little girl and was showing it off to others. I know. I heard Senior Yu's name from Senior Huan. However, if you ask 10 people in the Jianghu, I'm afraid that even 10 of them wouldn't know who Yumingxin is. Although Zhang Xiaowan knew that Yu Mingxin couldn't hear her, she still didn't forget to give her a blow when she remembered that she wanted to absorb her divine sense and qi. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Com to vote. Chapter 1148. Hee. After hearing my identity, are you very surprised? Envious? You want to see my real face? Yu Mingxin was still smiling. Sweat. Zhang Xiaohua touched her forehead. Why does this senior you speak like little fishing, yeah? Could it be that she's not that old? However, after hearing about Yu Mingxin's real face, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. In the portraits in the Jade Hall of the Fragrance Cult, in Wan Wuxin's Summer World, and in the Jade Hall of the Misty School's Ethereal Palace, Yu Mingxin's face was covered with a veil. I wonder what she looks like. However, just as this thought appeared in her mind, Yu Mingxin's voice sounded again. But don't be delusional. Only one person can see my face, and he has already seen it. In this world, no one can see it anymore. Are you kidding me? Zhang Xiaohua almost fell down. Since he won't let you see it, why are you still asking? Sigh. Yu Mingxin let out a long sigh. Her tone was full of sadness, different from her relaxed tone just now. But so what if he sees it? The immortal Tao is ethereal, and the great Tao is endless. Beautiful women age easily, but the human heart is not what it used to be. He said that the immortal Tao is the only thing in his heart, and that he should have cut off his feelings long ago. But I said that the immortal Tao is confusing, and that it's better to use feelings as a lamp and live freely in the mortal world. He said that everything in the world is a void, and only the immortal Tao is eternal. I said, Yu Mingxin smiled bitterly and said, I'm being silly again. It's been so many years, but whenever I talk about him, I feel that I'm talking too much. All right, you must have listened for a long time and want to know who he is. Zhang Xiaohua was about to nod, but immediately shook her head and said with a smile, Say whatever you want. I don't care if I listen or not. As expected, Yu Mingxin also said, however, right now, I can't tell you. Then, Yu Mingxin looked up at the window and said sadly, I used the primordial spirit projection technique to forcefully split a strand of my primordial spirit and put it into this wooden hairpin. I wanted to leave a little bit of my primordial spirit as a memento. If one day he really sees the essence of love, or if he really regrets what he has done, he'll be able to hear my voice when he comes to the embroidery building where we used to live together. But I don't know why, but the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth is becoming increasingly scarce. This Yuan spirit projection of mine has been unable to absorb the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth for a long time. It won't be long before this Yuan spirit projection of mine disappears. Furthermore, if it weren't for your little bit of true energy, it would be troublesome even if I wanted to project my primordial spirit. So, you don't have to blame me for absorbing that little bit of your true energy. In a while, I will use my story to make up for your loss. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she could only be silent. You've sucked away all the true qi. Can I still get back? Yu Mingxin lowered her head as if she was thinking. After a while, she raised her head and said, My story is very long. You have to listen carefully. It said that a long, long time ago. Yu Mingxin chuckled and said, Don't laugh. It's indeed something that happened a long time ago. This is also the reason why the Fragrant Religion, Misty School, and Shundao sect were established. I just don't know if the teachers of the Fragrant Religion can still tell you about it. Then, Yu Mingxin repeated the story that Wan Wuxin told to Zhang Xiaohua. There wasn't much difference. However, when she talked about the three of them traveling around before the establishment of the sect, she said, Before the three of us came to this world, there was still the way of immortals. This was what we learned in the secret plane. However, when we were traveling under a cliff, we found an array that was different from the one we learned. After 3 days and 3 nights of relentless attacks, we broke the array, and 3 rays of black light flew out from the array. The 3 of us chased after one of them and used our divine abilities to subdue the black light. Only then did we realize that they were actually three ancient magical treasures. These three magical treasures were different from the ones we used before and had incredible power. Among the three magical treasures, two of them were the purple phoenix hairpin and the other was the devil refining gourd. These three magical treasures were the first magical treasures that we obtained here and also proved the existence of the Way of Immortals. The two purple phoenix hairpins were obtained by Yang Haoya and I. The devil refining gourd was obtained by Wan Wuxin, because there were three magical treasures, one for each of us. Moreover, it was up to fate to obtain the magical treasures. Therefore, the three of us didn't feel that there was anything wrong and left happily. Of course, there was indeed nothing wrong with these three magical treasures. However, later on, then, Yu Mingxin talked about encountering the Earth's core. However, Yu Mingxin wasn't as frank as Wan Wuxin. She only said that it was something from the forbidden area of the incense cult, Huan Su, but didn't specify what it was. Then, she talked about Wan Wuxin. When Yang Haoya and I were seriously injured, Wan Wuxin of the Shindao sect self-detonated one of Sakura's magical treasures in order to deal a blow to him. Although the effect was achieved, Sakura was also seriously injured at that time and fled in panic. However, Wan Wuxin himself couldn't treat his injuries and died on the spot. That Huan Su was a name that Yang Haoya and I specially named in memory of Wan Wuxin. Looking at Yu Mingxin's increasingly weak brilliance, Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and said with a bitter smile, "Senior Yu, it seems that you don't have enough time. You're rambling on and on. Why don't you hurry up and finish the story? Could it be that you want to arouse my interest and then absorb my vital energy?" Yu Mingxin ignored her and said again, "But my story has just begun." Then, with a yearning look, she said, "For a long period of time, Yang Haoya and I were recuperating on Lingxiang Peak. Yang Haoya's Misty Peak can't be compared to our Lingxiang Peak. There's nothing there that he wanted. The reason why he wanted to build a Misty School there was because he wanted a scheme for something nearby. He thought that he knew a lot of secrets and thought that Wan Wuxin and I didn't know. Actually, I don't know whether Wan Wuxin knew or not, but I did. However, I was too lazy to explain. After all, everyone has their own selfish motives. Although Yang Haoya and I were seriously injured and our cultivation had regressed greatly, our Tao hearts were on the verge of collapse. But now that I think about it, those days should have been the happiest days of my life. Then, Yu Mingxin's words were actually a little bashful. The phrase, "love grows with time," I have long heard of it, but I never thought that it would appear on me. Speaking of which, cultivators of my generation have long placed feelings behind the immortal Tao. We only think of achieving the immortal Tao and don't dare to slack off. Feelings have long been cut off by the sword of wisdom. But because Yang Haoya and I had our Tao hearts collapsing and our cultivation regressing, we usually healed and talked together. But the love demon actually found a crack in our Tao hearts. We actually fell in love like ordinary people. At that time, we were intimately attached to each other every day and were really happy. Moreover, we both thought that the first magic treasure we got from this place was the proof of our feelings. Because of this, Yang Haoya gave his purple phoenix hairpin to me as a token of love. What about me? Of course, I also gave my purple phoenix hairpin to Yang Haoya. We firmly believe that my feelings should be the same as the purple phoenix hairpin. Although it had experienced many years, it would still be able to endure for a long time. Later, the two of us left Lingxiang Peak and came to Carefree City. Well, at that time, there was no Carefree City, only this beautiful, nameless lake. Yang Haoya and I, the two of us built a city here. Yang Haoya named this city Carefree City, and I was also called Carefree Girl by him. That day, when I asked him what it meant, he shook his head and didn't say anything. What I was thinking that day was nothing more than that. Although the Tao of immortality was unattainable, there was warmth in the world, and there was no need to worry. However, I only thought of one of the reasons and didn't think of the other. Why didn't I think of it that day? Yang Haoya called himself Night Wind. Wasn't that the wind that floated alone and had no fixed abode? I thought that he called himself romantic and wanted to be the night wind that brushed against one's face. Sigh. Until one day, young Haoya left a letter and left without saying goodbye. Only then did I know. I heard that he had never given up on the Tao of immortality. He heard that the Dalan Temple's Buddhism had a secret technique that could cut off the threads of love with the sword of wisdom. It could turn the love in one's heart into cultivation. He actually abandoned me and went to the Dalan Temple alone to look for Master Xian Kong, who had never shown his face. I'm sure you know what I was thinking at that time. My veil was lifted by him, and he drew a portrait of me beside the nameless lake. My heart was filled with his shadow. How could I not have him? Therefore, I followed him to the Dalan Temple and challenged him outside the Dalan Temple. I wanted to ask him to come back. Who knew? He actually avoided me and only sent a little monk to tell me that our fate had come to an end. He wanted to cultivate diligently in Buddhism in order to improve his cultivation. I was furious at that time and charged into the Dalan Temple without caring about anything else. In my rage, I couldn't help but show no mercy. I actually killed many monks in the Dalan Temple. At that time, Master Xian Kong of the Dalan Temple was actually not there. In the end, Yang Haoya saw that I had killed too many people and could only hold the purple phoenix hairpin in his hand. He knelt in front of me and asked me to stop. He would rather return the purple phoenix hairpin to me and let me cut off his head than come back with me. But how could I do it? How could I destroy his Tao heart? I had no choice but to take the purple phoenix hairpin. But when I wanted to throw the purple phoenix hairpin back to him, I couldn't bear to do it. It seemed that if I threw it, I would cut off all ties with him and never see him again. Therefore, I could only laugh coldly and turn to leave the Dalan Temple and return to Lingering Fragrance Peak. After that, I named the palace on Lingering Fragrance Peak as Immerse Palace. The name of Lingering Fragrance Peak was given by Yang Haoya, and I couldn't bear to change it. Yu Mingxin's voice became weaker and weaker until it was almost inaudible. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but perk up her ears. Following that, my cultivation remained stagnant, and my Tao heart couldn't be rebuilt. Therefore, I left the 2 purple phoenix hairpins in Immerse Palace and returned to Worry City. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. Chapter 1149. It seems that only in this Lingering Fragrance Mountain Villa, the Lingering Fragrance Mountain Villa that once had his aura, the Lingering Fragrance Mountain Villa that shared memories with him, I can let my half-cold heart have some real comfort. Perhaps you might not know the origin of this lingering fragrance. Yu Ming Xian's voice lowered a few notches. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know if it was because of the lack of Yuan Qi or because of Yu Ming Xian's shyness, but he could almost see the slight redness on Yu Ming Xian's veiled face. Spring dreams leave no trace. Autumn tint leaves no fragrance. Yu Ming Xian's mouth murmured. Her face was facing the sky again, almost losing control of her emotions. She said sorrowfully, Yang Lang, when were you and I incomparably in love? While reciting this poem, you drew my eyebrows. Is there a need for such happiness in the bedroom? Such happiness? Don't tell me. You don't miss it at all? Even if you have obtained the immortal Tao, even if you have obtained immortality, but the immortal Tao is bleak. Without my company, can you live happily? 10 miles of calm lake filled with frost. Every inch of black hair worried about the glorious years. Looking at each other in the shape of the moon, I only envy mandarin ducks, not immortals. Oh, Yang Lang, even ordinary people can understand the logic behind this. Why are you so stubborn? If we weren't seriously injured, I wouldn't have stopped you like this. But since the path to immortality is impossible to achieve, and you and I have such an ill-fated relationship, why can't you throw everything aside for me? Perhaps to a woman, no matter if she is a village woman or a fairy, this is a kind of concern. But to a man, it is only a kind of burden, a kind of experience. Yang Lang. Yuming Xian's voice was no longer as clear as before. It was already filled with sorrow. Sobbing sounds gradually rose. Hua, hua, hua. After a series of flashes, Yuming Xian's primordial spirit projection gradually dimmed. At this time, Yuming Xian raised her head and said in a helpless tone, "Immortality is perhaps the lifelong pursuit of cultivators of my generation. Emotions should also be a necessity for cultivators of my generation. Without emotions, what joy is there in becoming an immortal? Fellow Taoist, I've talked for a long time, but I've made a fool of myself. Well, there's not much time left. Yesterday, I received a message from the great Master Xiankong. He wants to settle his grudge with I at the Nameless Lake at noon today. I know that I provoked karma at the Dalan Temple last time. The great Master Xiankong's cultivation is not inferior to ours. Now that I's cultivation has regressed, I'm most likely no match for him. This wooden hairpin was personally made by I. Originally, I wanted to keep it for Yang Lang to see when he returned. But now, fellow Taoist, you're here, but Yang Lang still hasn't come. Furthermore, the projection of I's primordial spirit is about to dissipate. I'm afraid, fellow Taoist, whether you're a man or a woman, I'll leave this wooden hairpin to you. Tell the story of this wooden hairpin to your lover and make him cherish your fate even more. 10 years to meet, 100 years to cross on the same boat, 1,000 years to sleep on the same bed. How can a person's love be judged only by time? If we're not fated, even if 10,000 years, how can we meet once? Sigh, it's better to forget each other in the pugilistic world than to help each other in times of need. Xiaohua, Daoist Xiao, I only understood your words today. Yu Mingxin suddenly murmured again. Her eyes looked into the distance with some reluctance. Xiaohua, who is this? Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously stared blankly. She had never heard Wan Wuxin mention this name before. But if it wasn't for you, Daoist Xiao, even if my cultivation was greatly reduced, I wouldn't have fallen into the mortal world, causing such a tragedy. Yu Mingxin murmured a few words in a low voice. She was almost silent. Then, she raised her head and smiled. All right, fellow Taoist, you know why I call you fellow Taoist, right? Your true qi is clearly different from the mental cultivation method of the incense sect. It must have been hard for you to listen to my story for so long. And the Dalan Temple. Xiankong, there's a problem. I'm hearing Yu Mingxin's tone change, calling herself, I, and calling her fellow Taoist. Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly. Hearing Yu Mingxin's words, she seemed to already know that she wasn't a disciple of the incense sect. But then, Yu Mingxin's primordial spirit projection gradually dimmed. She didn't even finish her last sentence before turning into a ball of light and dissipating between heaven and earth. Sigh, Yu Mingxin, the founder of the incense sect, a person at the peak of the immortal Tao. But, as a woman, she actually had such a sad and graceful love story. Carefree girl, Yu Mingxin, which one is the real Yu Mingxin? Seeing Yu Mingxin's primordial spirit projection turn into light and disappear, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel sad. She thought to herself, when she left behind her primordial spirit projection, Senior, you didn't know that she would end up being suppressed under the Frown Pagoda. But even so, she didn't forget to leave a trace of remembrance for Senior Yang, hoping that Senior Yang would come and take a look. Unfortunately, it's already been tens of thousands of years. Senior Yang is nowhere to be found. Senior Yu is suppressed under the Carefree Lake. What is Senior Yang doing? Senior Yang didn't come, but I came. This, the cause from tens of thousands of years ago, became the effect now. But this effect isn't an ending. Perhaps it's a silent ending. But Senior Yu's last sentence, what does it mean? There's a problem with the Dalan Temple's Master Xiankong. What's the problem? It's all from tens of thousands of years ago. Even if there's a problem, there's no problem. Senior Yu, this little one will remember Senior's story. Actually, you might not know, but your story as the Carefree Girl has long been spread around the Carefree Lake. Countless scholars and literati have been reciting the story of the Carefree Girl. Although, the story is different from what you said, but The pursuit of perfection and the pursuit of love is no different from seniors from tens of thousands of years ago. If you knew this, perhaps you would be able to rest in peace at the bottom of the carefree lake. As he spoke, Zhang Xiaohua looked at the wooden hairpin carved from ordinary peach wood on the table. In his heart, he felt that it was incomparably precious. It was more important than the real purple phoenix hairpin. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and put the 4 different but identical purple phoenix hairpins into his money pouch. He began to imagine how he would tell Meng the story of the carefree girl in the future, how he would personally insert the wooden hairpin into Meng's hairbun, and how he would bite Meng's earlobe and recite the poem, "A spring dream leaves no trace, an autumn tint leaves no fragrance" to her. But suddenly his heart trembled. Meng is the saintess of the demonic Tao, and I am a cultivator of the immortal Tao. She carries the inheritance of the demonic Tao of the Tenryu sect, and I carry the great task of establishing the Beidou school. Isn't this even greater than the difference between Senior Yang and Senior Yu? This is karma. Could it be that you made me travel thousands of miles from Pingyang City to Carefree City just to give me a warning? Could it be that my heart palpitations in Pingyang City were because of this? For a moment, Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely. He felt as if he was being controlled by an invisible hand. He turned and went downstairs. Zhang Xiaohua stood in front of Yu Mingxin's portrait again. Although her face was covered by a veil, Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be able to see Yu Mingxin's face. He seemed to be able to see her frowning because of love. He also seemed to be able to see a bit of joy and a bit of slyness in her eyes. "Sai, forget it." Zhang Xiaohua bowed deeply and muttered to himself, "Senior Yu, if Meng is like you, missing me so much that it becomes a disaster, what harm is there in giving up the immortal Tao and the cultivators of the immortal Tao? A person's life is only a few decades. If I have Meng's company, my life will not be wasted. However, if I can help the Tenryu sect find a Sakura so that the Tenryu sect's orthodoxy can be passed down, then will Meng be able to roam the Jianghu with me? But that won't do. Meng's daughter still has to be the saintess of the Tenryu sect. Sai, I am puzzled. How can the child of Sakura and the saintess be a daughter?" The more Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, the more vexed he felt. It seemed that, unless he went to the Tenryu sect to work as a Sakura, he could only be with Meng. Otherwise, there was no good way at all. "God, since you let me meet Meng, why did you let me make such a choice?" Zhang Xiaohua glanced at Yu Mingxin's portrait one last time. He leaped up and flew towards Poyang town like an arrow, as if he wanted to escape from Macho City. It seemed that the further he went, the further he would have to choose. Previously, he had the thought of going to the Tenryu sect to see Meng, but at this time, the urgency of making a choice had completely killed it. Zhang Xiaohua even thought about what he should do if he saw Sakura and asked him to go to the Tenryu sect. After a few days, Zhang Xiaohua returned to Poyang town. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's slightly gloomy expression, Li Jinfeng suppressed his astonishment. He didn't ask Zhang Xiaohua how she flew back to Poyang town from the distant Macho City so quickly. He only asked with faint concern, "Xiaohua, have you finished handling the matter? We can go back now?" Zhang Xiaohua silently nodded. Chu Zhigao's family regarded Zhang Xiaohua as Master Immortal, so they naturally panicked and didn't dare to say anything. During the few days when Zhang Xiaohua left, Chu Zhigao had already prepared everything. He even bought 2 carriages and even hired a coachman to help him drive the other carriage. At this time, when he saw Zhang Xiaohua coming back and also leaving, he hurriedly prepared the 2 carriages and invited Zhang Xiaohua to get on. Zhang Xiaohua looked at him and said in a low voice, "There's no need for a coachman. It's so far away, let him make a trip. When we arrive, he will have to come back. I could drive the carriage myself." Chu Zhigao was so frightened that he hurriedly stepped forward and smiled apologetically. "Master Immortal, what are you saying? You are my son's teacher. How can I let you drive the carriage?" "Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What's wrong with that?" Zhang Xiaohua's face turned cold and said, "I used to do this many times, don't worry. I won't be worse than you. However, The coachman at the side who was driving the carriage had an anxious look on his face as he hurriedly said, "This, young master, you let this humble one do the work. This humble one, my entire family is waiting for this money to live. Shopkeeper Chu gave me 3 cents of deposit, and this humble one has already used it to buy rice. If you drive the carriage and this humble one doesn't go, this humble one doesn't have the money to return to Shopkeeper Chu, and this humble one's 4-year-old child will starve again." This, when Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she looked at the man's face full of wrinkles, full of traces of wind and frost. He was no different from her father a few years ago. She couldn't help but feel her heart ache and tears almost flowed out. Then, Zhang Xiaohua seemed to be enlightened. She laughed and hid the tears in her eyes and said, "When I was young, I didn't know the taste of worry and forced myself to say that I was worried. Now that I've tasted the taste of worry, I think it's a cold autumn. The ancients didn't lie. Others are still bending over for 5 buckets of rice. What right do I have to talk about my worries in front of others? This uncle, please drive the carriage. I will double the fare." "Yes, thank you, young master." The man was overjoyed and a smile appeared on his face. "Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you." Chapter 1150. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's relieved laughter and his shrewd way of handling matters, he did not give the coachman money for no reason, just because he pitied him. Instead, he asked the coachman to drive the carriage to Pingyang City before he doubled the fare. Seeing this, he was even more delighted. He felt that this village lad was becoming more mature. Before the 2 carriages left, Li Jinfeng thought of something again. He pulled Zhang Xiaohua aside and said in a low voice, "Xiaohua, there's still one more thing." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Young masterly, please speak frankly. I am your teaching disciple. There's nothing that can't be said clearly." Young masterly blushed slightly and said, "It's like this. Miss May's remains are buried in a foreign land. I thought for a long time, although the feng shui of her grave is excellent, she is still a lonely soul here. The May family is also a prominent family in Nanjiao Town. They must have their own grave in Nanjiao Town. If we can send Miss May's coffin back to Nanjiao Town and let her rest peacefully beside her family, wouldn't that be better?" Zhang Xiaohua's expression turned serious. Looking at Li Jinfeng, who was almost the embodiment of justice, she could not help but feel like she was looking at a tall mountain. She said seriously, "This is what we should do. We should do this." "But," young Masterly looked embarrassed. "But I am embarrassed. Moreover, Miss May's coffin has to be sent so far away. Although it's already autumn, the weather—" "Ha." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Since young Masterly is in such a mood, how can I not fulfill your wish?" "Disciple?" Li Jinfeng waved his hand and said, "You'd better call yourself I. That sounds more profound. As your disciple, I don't dare to call myself that." "Then I'll call myself I in the future." Zhang Xiaohua giggled and said, "Isn't the money in I's pocket yours, young Masterly? There's no need to think about it. As for Miss May's corpse, don't worry. I can guarantee that it won't rot for many years." "Don't." Li Jinfeng hurriedly waved his hand. "That's not necessarily true. Being too ostentatious isn't suitable for Miss May. If there's anything abrupt, Miss May won't be able to rest in peace even in the underworld." "And don't worry," Zhang Xiaohua said. She turned around to find the man who was driving the carriage and told him the situation. The man was even more delighted. He didn't care about anything. First of all, it was a long journey and the cost of the carriage was high. Many people were willing to take it and would not refuse because of the coffin. Second of all, he would have a companion when he came back. Not long after, the man who was driving the carriage found another man who was about the same age as him. He was also driving the carriage. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have to worry about these things. Chu Zhigao could handle it. However, when the 3 carriages left Poyang Town and Zhang Xiaohua brought down the huge coffin from the mountain, the 2 men were stunned. At the same time, the 2 men were also relieved. From Poyang Town to Pingyang City, they didn't know how many barren hills and unruly rivers there were. They also didn't know how many bandits they would encounter. Looking at the young master's skills, how could they not be safe? After placing Mei Qinglian's coffin, the man drove the carriage and walked at the back. Chu Zhigao drove the carriage and walked at the front with Zhang Xiaohua and Li Jinfeng. When they left Poyang town and saw that Zhang Xiaohua's knot in her heart was gradually untied, Li Jinfeng asked with a smile, "Xiaohua, why did you go out for a few days and come back with such a face? Could it be that you didn't find the person you were looking for?" Zhang Xiaohua retracted her divine senses and looked at the scholar she met when she came out of the Guizhuang house. Thinking of the many merits of this scholar that could be her role model, she didn't hide anything and smiled. "Of course I have to find the person I was looking for. If they weren't eliminated, more people in the world would be killed by them. If that's the case, you should have a straightforward look on your face. Why do you look so gloomy?" "That's right." Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Young masterly, if it's killing, it's not as straightforward as you think. It's a life. If it wasn't because I had no other choice, I wouldn't be so ruthless." Li Jinfeng squinted his eyes and smiled. "Different professions are like different mountains. I don't understand you. I just feel that if I had half of your martial arts, I would have been chased by bandits and killed them long ago. Why would I have to run for thousands of miles?" "That's true. With martial arts to rely on, you could do anything with a straight back." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. She thought for a moment and said, "Young Master Li, have you heard the story of the sorrowless woman by the sorrowless lake?" "Of course." Young Master Li smiled. "That's a popular legend since ancient times. How could I not know? Not only that, there are many stories and poems to commemorate the sorrowless woman." Why are you suddenly asking about this? Could it be you met another sorrowless woman by the sorrowless lake? I understand. Xiaohua, you have also grown up and can be troubled by love." Zhang Xiaohua blushed slightly. She waved her hand and said, "Young Master Li, you misunderstand. It's like this." Zhang Xiaohua then told the story of Yu Ming Xin in full detail. Li Jinfeng listened on the side and was stunned. The expression on his face was very interesting. The story of the sorrowless woman. Li Jinfeng had heard a lot. Just as he said, the later generations did not know how many versions of the story of the sorrowless woman. Even the stories of the sorrowless woman's descendants were made up. The plots were continuous and the twists of the story were very exciting. But Li Jinfeng had never thought that the sorrowless woman was actually still alive in this world. Moreover, the story of the sorrowless woman was so simple. It was as simple as the change of feelings between a man and a woman in the marketplace. Today, they loved each other, and tomorrow, they would abandon each other. However, whether it was the real sorrowless woman or the story of the sorrowless woman, the one thing that did not change was the sorrowless woman's steadfast heart and persistence in love. In the so-called immortal Tao, there are also unfaithful men. Li Jinfeng came to his senses, and the first thing he said was unexpectedly this. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but sweat. "This, young Master Li, Qi practitioners of the immortal Tao are still human after all. Even if they have great magical powers, as a human, they are still human. Besides, Senior Yang can't be considered unfaithful. It's just that, in order to pursue the immortal Tao, since you know that Senior Yang also has pursuits, then why do you have a gloomy face?" Li Jinfeng looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a faint smile. He seemed to know what was on Zhang Xiaohua's mind. "But, Senior Yu spent the rest of her life in solitude. Even before she was suppressed under the frowning tower by the great wizard Xian Kong, she still wanted to leave behind her feelings. She even damaged her cultivation and left behind a trace of her primordial spirit projection. She only wanted to let Senior Yang know." "Know what?" Li Jinfeng asked. "That's right. What did she know?" Zhang Xiaohua was also stunned. It seemed like she was telling Senior Yang that she did not regret her feelings for Senior Yang, nor did she regret what she did for Senior Yang. That's right. Senior Yu was able to make such detailed arrangements before the arrival of a great enemy. Naturally, Senior Yu had long forgiven Senior Yang. Even if she was always complaining about Senior Yang in the story with you and did not say a word of forgiveness. But can you hear the hatred in Senior Yu's tone? There is no hatred. At most, she is blaming him. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. That's right. Although I don't understand why their feelings for each other came so late, feelings are feelings. It doesn't matter if it was sooner or later. Perhaps Senior Yang later regretted his feelings for a higher goal. But Senior Yu seemed to understand Senior Yang's goal in the end. Didn't you see? Senior Yang returned the purple phoenix hairpin to Senior Yu, but Senior Yu did not return it to Senior Yang. To be honest, when Senior Yu went to look for Senior Yang, she probably already knew the outcome. She might even have been prepared to fall in the Dalan Temple. Sigh, I understand now. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Senior Yu is truly an infatuated person. Only an outsider like young Master Li can see it clearly. That's right. An outsider can see the person in the game clearly. But where's the person in the game? Li Jinfeng smiled bitterly. He seemed to have thought of his own game. However, Zhang Xiaohua thought again. But when the great wizard Xin Kong suppressed Senior Yu, where was Senior Yang? Where is he? And after so long, did Senior Yang never think of Senior Yu? You are not him, and I am not you. How do you know what he is thinking? Li Jinfeng said with a smile. Maybe Senior Yang has obtained the Tao and become an immortal, and the path he chose has been cleared. Or maybe he regrets it, but Senior Yu is also suppressed under the Frown Pagoda, and he can't save her. Rather than being sad, he might as well not see her. He didn't even go to the Carefree Lake. Naturally, he wouldn't go to the embroidery house. Moreover, it is heart-wrenching pain to look at something and think of someone else. Xiaohua, you might not be able to understand this kind of pain. What can I not understand? Zhang Xiaohua straightened her neck and said, Then tell me, what are you sad about? Li Jinfeng seemed to have succeeded in his evil plan. This, Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss for words. She had always believed that if one said something happy, it might not be twice as happy. It might even be the envy of others. If one said something sad, it might not be half as sad. It might even be the schadenfreude of others. However, when she looked at Li Jinfeng, she couldn't help but trust him a little more. She said, You haven't even settled your own matters, and you still have to rely on me. If I tell you, what can you do? When Li Jinfeng heard this, he didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said, Why do I need to rely on you for my matters? That's strange. What's strange about it? Zhang Xiaohua said proudly. Oyin is now a disciple of the Beta School. She is Ai's junior sister. You tell me, Qiu Tong, is she also a relative of the Beta School? If she wants to get married, if she doesn't ask Oyin and me, her senior brother, do you think she dares to get married? Li Jinfeng was dumbfounded. Chapter 11:51. Looking at Li Jinfeng's shocked expression, Zhang Xiaohua said proudly, Young Master Li, tell me if I were to recommend you to Oyin, what do you think the outcome would be? Li Jinfeng was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, If such a thing can be forced into a deal, what hope do I have? I don't think Qiu Tong would be interested in a poor scholar like me. Even if Qiu Tong reluctantly agreed because of you, what about our lives in the future? Won't we be living in your shadow forever? If Qiu Tong wasn't willing, even if I begged you, what use would it be? Zhang Xiaohua was even more stunned. She was stunned for a moment, then gave Li Jinfeng a thumbs up and said, I'm impressed. You actually said such things to Qiu Tong's Mrs. Senior Brother. I'm really impressed. You really have guts. You only know now? Li Jinfeng pursed his lips, and there was a hint of pride in his tone. Then he leaned over and said, Why don't you tell me what's bothering you? Fine. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, I can't handle my own matters. Even if I tell you, will you be able to help? Even if you can help, won't I still have to deal with it myself? And if I can come out and tell you, won't I still have to deal with it? I have to deal with it myself. Why would I tell you? This. Li Jinfeng was obviously confused by Zhang Xiaohua's tongue-twisting words and almost couldn't react. Finally, he waved his hand and said, Fine, just pretend I didn't say anything. Hee hee. Seeing Li Jinfeng deflated, Zhang Xiaohua's face lit up. Chu Zhigao, who was driving the carriage in front, heard the two of them bickering at the back. He wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to, and couldn't hold it in. Come on, Brother Chu, laugh if you want to. Be careful not to choke. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. Ha ha! Chu Zhigao's laughter was so shocking that the birds in the bushes by the roadside flew away, causing the people in the car behind to be stunned. The carriages traveled for several days, following the route taken by Zhang Xiaohua and the Lotus Flower Escort Agency's caravan to the north. Although the horse carriage wasn't slow, it was still a far cry from Zhang Xiaohua's flying speed. Unknowingly, Zhang Xiaohua often stood at the front of the horse carriage and looked ahead helplessly. However, she could only see mountains and towns. They were still very far away from Pingyang City. However, in these 3 horse carriages, there were either old, weak, or young people. Only Chu Zhigao was a man with half-baked martial arts skills. How could he let Zhang Xiaohua leave with peace of mind? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua in such a state, how could Chu Zhigao not know what he was thinking? He took the opportunity to laugh and said, reporting to a mortal master, the speed of our carriage is slow. If a mortal master has something important to do, why don't you leave first? We don't have any gold or silver on us. One look, and you can tell that we are poor people. If we encounter robbers, it might not be inappropriate to speak nicely to them. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head. He had walked this path before. Even with the escorts of the Lotus Flower Escort Agency by his side, there were many bandits who coveted him. Most of the time, they had to use silver to pave the way. This was still reasonable. If you met an unreasonable person who stripped you of your clothes and chased your carriage away, who could you complain to? Chu Zhigao had been in Jianghu for many years, so he must have known. At this time, he only said it because he didn't want to delay Zhang Xiaohua's matter. It's nothing, I just want to go and watch the show. Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and said, since there is such a matter, why don't we just not go and watch the show? Sometimes, watching a show can take one's life. While he was talking, Zhang Xiaohua's expression froze. He unconsciously smiled and said, Brother Chu, please wait a moment. I will be back soon. He then made a hand seal and flew into the air. He had long forgotten to hide anything in front of the 2 coachmen behind him. He muttered, it's really like someone giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. This show, maybe I can make it in time. Immortal Master? 2 exclamations came from behind him. It was the 2 coachmen. Damn, how could I forget? Zhang Xiaohua was vexed. Indeed, there was a lively scene in the valley in front of them. There were a total of 30 carriages in the caravan. They were all covered with waterproof black felt and tied tightly with thick ropes as thick as a thumb. Around the carriages, there were dozens of coachmen standing beside the horses pulling the carriages. They used their hands to hold the reins of the horses tightly. Further out, there were dozens of burly men holding padeos in their hands. They were dressed like escorts and were evenly distributed beside the carriages. They were looking forward without blinking. There were less than 10 horses in front of them. On the horses, there were strong men who were dressed in martial attire. They were either holding swords or sabers in their hands. In the middle, there was a square-faced man who was dressed as an escort. He frowned slightly and turned his face to the 2 pale-faced, middle-aged men with inch-long beards. He whispered something to them with a respectful expression. However, the 2 men were not dressed as escorts. Opposite them, there were more than 100 people. Most of them were on foot and held various weapons in their hands. In front of them were 5 men who were dressed in short attire. They were also looking forward with gloomy expressions on their faces. In front of the 2 groups of people, there was a dark-skinned man dressed in sloppy clothes. His arms were bare, and he held a large machete in his hand. Opposite him was a young man dressed in the uniform of an escort agency. He held a padao in his hand, and he was using a not-so-mature light body technique. From time to time, he would throw out a few moves to fight with the man. At this moment, the young escort staggered, as though he had stepped on a rock. The dark-skinned man was overjoyed. He took a step forward and swept his large machete horizontally towards the escort's waist. Just as the large machete was about to strike the escort's waist, the young escort bent his body. He exerted strength in his slightly bent legs, and his entire body shot towards the dark-skinned man under the large machete like an arrow. The dark-skinned man was caught off guard and had no time to dodge. He could only let go of his grip, and the large machete flew away with a whoosh. The dark-skinned man raised his legs steadily, as though he wanted to block the incoming machete. His face did not seem to show any fear. Indeed, after the young escort passed the machete to the dark-skinned man's leg, he did not forget to slash forward. He did a somersault and stood up. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for letting me win. How is it, Stockade Masterbian? My Lotus Flower Escort Agency has already won 2 battles. According to the previous rules, you only have to pay 20% of the toll." The burly man opposite him looked at the dark-skinned man who was walking back helplessly and said with a smile, "Escort Leader Yuan, you've been on this road for many years and we're old acquaintances. If it were in the past, I wouldn't dare to charge you a single copper coin no matter how bold I am. But it's different now. I heard that you're using the name Misty School again. This Misty School doesn't seem to be as famous as the Righteous Alliance. The hundreds of brothers behind me all need to eat. Escort Leader Yuan, you don't mind if I charge you 20% more, right?" Escort Leader Yuan's face was a little angry. He held it in and cupped his hands. "Stockade Master Bien, we're all roaming the pugilistic world. We pay attention to the rules and face. If you change the rules without permission, I'm afraid it's inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Stockade Master Bien looked up at the sky and said proudly, "I opened this road and planted this tree. Of course, I set the rules." Then, he looked at the 2 people next to Escort Leader Yuan and said, "I know there's an expert next to Escort Leader Yuan, but if Escort Leader Yuan defeats my hundreds of brothers, will the toll be paid? Don't worry, I'll be free of charge on this road. Even in the future, as long as it's your Lotus Flower Escort Agency's carriage, I'll let it pass." The young man next to Escort Leader Yuan sneered and pulled out the long sword at his waist. He patted his horse and was about to dismount when he heard someone next to him sneer. Where did this wild man come from? How dare he ask the Lotus Flower Escort Agency for money? He must be tired of living. Who? Stockade Master Bien's face was full of anger. He turned his head and saw a tall and thin young man standing on a 30-feet-tall tree. The young man was holding a shiny yellow copper rod in his hand. Wasn't that Zhang Xiaohua who had flown over earlier? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua standing so high up, Stockade Master Bien's aura weakened a little. This was an extremely advanced Qinggong. Before he could speak, Zhang Xiaohua leaped down and used the ethereal steps to approach him. She shouted, "All of you take this. Today I'm going to fight hundreds of you." Before Stockade Master Bien could raise the long spear in his hand, Zhang Xiaohua's copper staff smashed in front of him with a whooshing sound. The long spear was like a small piece of firewood. With a whoosh, it flew into the air and disappeared. Stockade Master Bien's arms were numb, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was torn. Immediately after, with a bang, the copper rod swept across the head of the horse Stockade Master Bien was sitting on. Immediately, the horse's head was smashed into pieces. Pale white brain matter and dark red horse blood splattered all over Stockade Master Bien's body. Stockade Master Bien couldn't control his body and fell to the ground. His red and white clothes were mixed with mud, making him look even more miserable. Zhang Xiaohua effortlessly took care of Stockade Master Bien. She didn't stop and continued fighting. Even though the other Stockade Masters on horseback wanted to flee, how could they be faster than Zhang Xiaohua? In just a moment, 10 Stockade Masters fell to the ground. Their faces were covered in blood and dirt. 10 tall steeds collapsed on the ground with their heads badly mutilated. Behind Zhang Xiaohua, the people from the Lotus Flower Escort Agency, as well as the 2 young men who weren't from the Lotus Flower Escort Agency, all stood there in a daze, watching with their eyes and mouths agape. Stop right there. Whoever dares to escape will end up like the horses. Zhang Xiaohua's shout frightened the hundreds of people behind Stockade Master Bien who were about to scatter and flee. They all stood there with pale faces, their arms and legs trembling uncontrollably. It was as if they didn't know what to do. Suddenly, a quick-witted person threw away the weapon in his hand, placed his arms behind his head, and knelt down with a thud. He cried, "Hero, please spare my life. I have a 4-year-old mother who is crying piteously for food and a 72-year-old child who needs to be supported. If I die, it will be 3 lives." Everyone came to their senses and threw away their weapons, shouting in unison, "Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please bookmark. Please tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to cast a recommendation vote or a monthly vote at Chidian. Come." Chapter 1152. Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely when she heard the bandits' hilarious cries for help. She stroked her chin and laughed. "Gentlemen, if you're begging for mercy, you should at least come up with a more sincere reason. This is the first time I've heard of a 4-year-old mother and a 72-year-old child." Everyone came to a sudden realization. They knelt down with strange expressions and stole glances at Zhang Xiaohua's emotions. Escort leader Yuan dismounted from his horse and walked briskly to Zhang Xiaohua. He cupped his fists and said, "Gentlemen, thank you for your help." Escort leader Yuan. I haven't seen you in a few years, and you become an escort leader?" Escort leader Yuan was stunned. He looked up and exclaimed, "Zhang." However, he immediately shook his head and said sincerely, "Although you look quite similar to an old acquaintance of mine, I dare not recognize you." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand. "Let's not talk about this for now. Yuan Changqing, take care of these bandits first. I know the rules of your escort agency, and I have no intention of breaking them. However, since they've already boasted, let's make them suffer." "Huh? You're really—" Yuan Changqing was about to call out her name in shock. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hand again. She had only taken care of a few bandits, because she had heard them say that Zhang Xiaohu's Misty School was inferior to the Righteous Alliance. However, it was a hindrance to his identity as an immortal cultivator. If others were to find out, they would ridicule him for no reason. There was indeed nothing to be proud of. "All right, there are 3 carriages about 10 li behind us. Send someone to pick them up." "Yes, I'll do so right away." Yuan Changqing was naturally very respectful now that he knew of Zhang Xiaohua's identity. He was the younger brother of the Misty School's sect master. His martial arts skills aside, just this title alone was worthy of his respect. The 2 young men who weren't escorts were curious as they watched the 2 of them talk. However, they knew that this wasn't the place to talk, so they didn't approach them. Yuan Changqing walked up to the 10 fort masters who had just stood up. Their faces were covered in dust, and their expressions were perturbed. They didn't know what to do. Yuan Changqing cupped his hands and said, "Fort Master Bien, I'm really sorry to have startled you. This little brother is a disciple of my Misty School. He just happened to pass by here." He happened to hear Fort Master's speech, so he couldn't help but intervene. Soon after, he turned his head and glanced at Zhang Xiaohua, who was casually holding a copper rod in her hand. He smiled again and said, "Of course, my little brother from the Misty School is inexperienced in the Jianghu. His actions were ruthless and broke the rules of the underworld. I, Yuan, hereby apologize to Stockade Master Bien. My Lotus Escort Agency will compensate for these dozen or so fine steeds. And this time, my little brother's fee for borrowing the road will not be small." When Stockade Master Bien heard this, his face turned red and he shouted, "Escort Leader Yuan, are you looking down on me? What are these dozen or so horses? Could it be worth one of Bien's lives? Besides, when have I ever gone back on my words? I've already said that as long as someone from your Lotus Escort Agency can defeat all of my brothers, not to mention this time, I won't take a single cent from you for all of your escorts in the future. Do you want me to become someone who goes back on my words?" Yuan Changqing thought to himself, "Didn't I want you to say this?" His face was still hesitant. "But this little brother isn't a member of my Lotus Escort Agency. He's from the Misty School. All right, Escort Leader Yuan, we're all people of the Jianghu. How can we go back on our words? Otherwise, before you've even walked 3 li, the spittle of the Jianghu will drown me. Lotus Escort Agency and Misty School, aren't they one? If everyone doesn't give face to the Misty School, how can your Lotus escort agency walk the Jianghu? As he spoke, he stole a glance at Zhang Xiaohua. He pulled on Yuan Changqing's sleeve and said in a low voice, Who is Xiao Xia? How come I've never heard of him? His martial arts, TSK. I'm afraid he's stronger than 10 of you. Escort leader Yuan? Can you introduce me to him? For Master Bien, it's not that I don't want to agree, but this little brother is indeed a little god of play from the Misty School. Didn't you see? Just now, the dozen or so horses were all smashed to death. If it were someone else, who would do that? If you get to know him, and he passes by here in the future, looking for you for no reason, if he's unhappy, who do you think will be unlucky? Fort Master Bien shrunk his neck and shivered. He said in a low voice, then, I won't stay any longer. Brother, I'll accept your kindness. The next time I come, I'll definitely meet you on the mountain. Definitely. Fort Master Bien, you take care. All right, Brother Yuan. Don't worry. I'll be friends with you for the next few days on the road. This time, no one will stop you. Yuan Changqing was overjoyed. He cupped his fists and said, Thank you, Fort Master Bien. Fort Master Bien stood up and reorganized his troops. He cupped his fists at Zhang Xiaohua and said, The green hills never change, and the clear waters flow forever. I'm not your match today, but if there's a chance in the future, I'll come and learn from you. Zhang Xiaohua had heard Stockade Chief Bien's words the last time he passed by this place. When he heard it, he could not help but want to laugh again. Zhang Xiaohua suppressed his laughter and waved his hand, indicating that Stockade Chief Bien could leave. Only then did Stockade Chief Bien relax. He waved his hand and left in a hurry with his defeated troops. Escort leader Yuan, you're really something. No wonder you're an escort leader. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile as soon as Fort Master Bien walked away. No, it's all thanks to Brother Zhang. If it weren't for Brother Zhang, I'm afraid we'd have to go through a lot of trouble today. It's not that bad. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the two disciples who wanted to say something and said, With these two senior brothers here, nothing will happen. By the way, Brother Zhang, let me introduce you. These two are disciples of the Misty School. This one's surname is Lu, and his name is Da. This one's surname is Ku, and his name is Nanli. Zhang Xiaohua cupped her fists and said, Greetings, Senior Brother Lu and Senior Brother Ku. I wouldn't dare. Greetings, Junior Brother Zhang. Junior Brother Zhang's cudgel technique is really amazing. I'm really impressed. I heard that during the martial arts assembly of the incense cult, there was someone called Ren Xiaoyao who also used a copper cudgel. He suppressed everyone and shocked the Jianghu. I'm afraid Junior Brother Zhang isn't any worse than him. The two senior brothers have also been to the incense cult? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Yes, the two of us came back from Shishine Peak with gang leader Zhang. How could we not have been to the incense cult? Did Brother Zhang come back to the Misty School with Elder Hu? I don't think you look familiar. Looking at the two people's expressions, Zhang Xiaohua also realized that although she had shown her face on the Shishine Peak, there were thousands of disciples of the Misty School on the Shishine Peak. How could you know all of them? I didn't come back to the Misty Mountain Villa with Elder Hu. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how to introduce herself. Yuan Changqing next to them laughed and said, Brother Lu, Brother Ku, you two are blind. Didn't you just say that you didn't complete the task given by gang leader Zhang and were afraid that you wouldn't be able to report back? There's a ready-made Buddha in front of you. If you ask for help, I can guarantee that you will be fine. The two people were shocked. They looked at Zhang Xiaohua carefully and asked curiously, Junior Brother Zhang, what's the relationship with gang leader Zhang? Do you still need to ask? They both have the surname Zhang. The little brother in front of you is gang leader Zhang's younger brother. If he helped you, wouldn't it be 10,000 times better? Oh, Junior Brother, Zhang, my eyes are blind. It's really, don't be offended. Gang leader Zhang has never talked about his family, so I didn't expect him to have such a powerful younger brother. Don't blame me. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, Don't blame me for not knowing. Besides, what can I blame you for? That's great. The two people were happy to see Zhang Xiaohua was amiable. At this time, the people of the escort agency had already cleaned up the surroundings, arranged the carriage, and were ready to set off. It was just that Yuan Changqing had ordered several escorts to follow Zhang Xiaohua's instructions to look for Chu Zhigao and the others, so they waited quietly. Seeing that the 3 carriages had not arrived yet, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I wonder what the 2 senior brothers are doing here? Could it be that gang leader Zhang attaches great importance to it?" This, Luda thought for a moment and said, "This matter is very confidential. I just want little brother to say a few good words in front of gang leader Zhang. As for the specific matter, little brother is not a disciple of the Misty School, and gang leader Zhang also told me not to tell anyone." So Zhang Xiao nodded and said, "Well, you guys are really reliable. Don't worry, when I go back, I'll talk to second brother. If it's not something extremely important, I'll let second brother go. I still have this bit of face. It's nothing important, nothing important." Kananli next to him said, "It's just to pick up a few people. It's just that you didn't find them." Ah, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. A strange expression appeared on her face. She whispered, "Senior brothers, are you guys going to Dragon Mountain to look for someone?" Ah, Luda and Kunanli were even more surprised. They looked at each other and said in unison, "We didn't slip up just now, right? Little brother, how did you know?" "How would I know? I begged second brother to do this." Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "You guys went to Dragon Mountain to pick up Chu Zhigao? Why did you run here? And you've been delayed for so long?" After hearing Zhang Xiaohua's orders, the 2 no longer had any doubts. Luda looked at Kananli and said, "Little brother, I'll let you know. It's not that we're slacking off. After junior brother Ku and I arrived at Horn Dragon Mountain, we couldn't find him no matter how hard we searched. Chu Zhigao spent a long time searching the entire Horn Dragon Mountain multiple times, but to no avail. Little brother, you should know that sect leader Zhang trusts us, which is why he told us to hide this matter from us. How can we face sect leader Zhang if we mess up the first time we do something? So, therefore, I discussed with senior marshal brother Liu and wanted to search the towns around Dragon Mountain. However, we searched the towns near Dragon Mountain and even the towns further away, such as Misty Rain Town and Poyang Town, but we still couldn't find a trace of them. So, we returned home and wanted to apologize to sect leader Zhang." Chapter 1153. At this point, Luda glanced at Yuan Changqing, who was hiding in the distance to avoid suspicion, and said, "Just yesterday, we met the escort team of the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. Since we were going back to Pingyang City, we left together." "Ha ha!" Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and laughed. "Great, so that's how it is. Thank you for your hard work, senior brothers. However, since we met here, then you 2 senior brothers can also report to your big gang leader. There's no need for me to go down and intercede for you." "Little brother, you mean?" Kunanli didn't quite understand. However, Luda had long seen the 3 carriages in the distance, as well as the escorts of the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. He said happily, "Could it be that the people in the carriages behind are the people we're going to pick up?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded. "That's right. Escort these 3 carriages back to the Huan Shi Mountain Villa. It'll be a great merit." Luda and Kunanli were overjoyed. They cupped their hands and said, "Thank you, little brother. No, it's all my fault for troubling the 2 of you. I still feel bad about it. How can I accept your thanks?" Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hands. Although Chu Zhigao knew that the Lotus Flower Escort Agency belonged to the Misty School, he still felt uneasy in his heart. It was only when he saw Zhang Xiaohua in the carriage that he felt relieved. Once he reached the front of the carriage, he jumped down and called out, "Immortal," but just as he called out a word, Zhang Xiaohua cut him off. "Brother Chu, come. These 2 were sent by my second brother to pick you and Jing up. It's just that I thought that you were at Dragon Mountain that day. They searched for you in Dragon Mountain for many days, but they couldn't find you. They even searched the surrounding towns. Chu is untalented. I've troubled the 2 heroes." Chu Zhigao stepped forward and bowed. We don't dare. Luda and Kunanli also returned the greeting. Behind Chu Zhigao, Li Jinfeng also jumped down from the carriage. Yuan Changqing had actually seen Li Jinfeng several times. The two of them greeted each other in astonishment and were quite familiar with each other. The two coachmen's eyes were even more fervent as they looked at Zhang Xiaohua with extreme devotion, as if Zhang Xiaohua was really a deity. Encountering the people from the Lotus Flower Escort Agency, the two coachmen naturally wouldn't use them anymore. Zhang Xiaohua let Chu Zhigao use double the salary and double the price to buy that lousy carriage and sent the two of them back to Poyang Town. Seeing the two of them whispering excitedly to each other and looking back at her, Zhang Xiaohua almost wanted to go over and admonish them. The convoy of the Lotus Flower Escort Agency reorganized and placed Chu Zhigao's 3 carriages in the middle, with Lu De, Kun Nanli, and the other escorts guarding them. The entire convoy began to move forward. Zhang Xiaohua walked in front of Yuan Changqing, cupped her hands and said, "Brother Yuan, I still have some matters to attend to and need to take a step forward. I'll leave these 3 carriages and 4 people to Brother Yuan." There's still a long way to go from here to Pingyang City. Although little brother's martial arts are strong, there's still some risk in traveling alone. Why not follow the escort team? I still want to rely on little brother's martial arts to return to Pingyang City safely, Yuan Changqing said with concern. It's not like I haven't walked this path before. As long as there are rules to follow, nothing will happen to the convoy of the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. Besides, there's still Senior Brother Lu and Senior Brother Ko. Nothing will happen. As for me, I have some urgent matters to attend to and can't stay for long. I hope you can forgive me. Then, little brother, be careful on the road, Yuan Changqing exhorted. Zhang Xiaohua returned to the carriage and said a few words to Li Jinfeng and Chu Zhigao. She passed a few jade talismans to Li Jinfeng and whispered, "If there's an extremely dangerous matter, crush this green jade piece, and it can save your life. Also, if you crush that white jade piece, I'll know, and I'll rush over as soon as possible." When Li Jinfeng heard this, he carefully hid the few jade talismans and said, "Xiaohua, if you have something to do, leave quickly. I'm just a weak scholar. I'm afraid that even bandits won't be interested in me. You have to be careful. Otherwise, Sister Chiu Tong won't have anyone to rely on for the rest of her life, Xiaohua." Li Jinfeng's face was a little red. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and used the ethereal steps to leave. When she couldn't see any trace of them, she made a hand gesture to conceal herself and soared into the sky. The entire pugilistic world attention was focused on Mount Yao. At this moment, it was different from what Zhang Xiaohua saw previously. Setting aside the fact that the climate within a radius of 12 miles around Yao Mountain was obviously different from the surrounding areas, the trees on Yao Mountain were still as green as ever, even though it was already autumn. It was no different from spring or summer, and some of the ordinary grasses were even more vigorous than usual, and the flowers were even more dazzling. Not to mention that the disciples of the Xiangxiang cult, Dalan Temple, between the clouds and the water, and the Righteous Tao Alliance were even more strict. Just the number of disciples in the encampment of the 4 sects indicated that the sect leaders of the 4 sects had already arrived. Let's talk about the scheming people on Mount Yao. When Zhang Xiaohua came to take a look that day, the various sects had set up defenses around Mount Yao to prevent other sects' disciples from going up the mountain. But at that time, only the sect leader of Between the Clouds and the Water, by Yin Xiu, was present. The other sect's strength was reduced by a lot, but there were still many people who relied on their superior lightness skills to sneak in from different places. Looking at the current situation, although it could not be said that every inch of the mountain was carefully searched, there were at least a few thousand people spread out over the several dozen li of Mount Yao, each of them searching on their own. Some of them were like bullets, running here and there to look. Some of them were holding shovels and hoes in their hands, digging here and there. There were also some who were even more mysterious, holding all kinds of discs, pointers, boxes, and other strange things in their hands. They looked at the things in their hands while walking up the mountain along different routes. In short, there were many more. However, although there were thousands of people scattered on Mount Yao, there were no bubbles. They were all covered by the trees of the mountain. But these people's actions caused the people outside the mountain to be dissatisfied. Taking advantage of the night, there were many people sneaking into Mount Yao every day. Although the disciples of the four sects tried to stop them, with so many people rushing in, there were always people who slipped through the net. Buzz! Everyone on Mount Yao, as well as at the foot of the mountain, looked up to see what was happening. Bang! Another muffled sound rang out, and a wave of air descended from the sky like a hurricane. The trees and rocks were blown away, and the people on Mount Yao staggered and almost fell to the ground. After the wave of air passed, the strange sound also stopped, and the place returned to its previous tranquility. The people on Mount Yao seemed to be moved. Without prior agreement, they rushed in all directions, heading in the direction of their thoughts. At the foot of the mountain, several small sects leaders and disciples broke through the blockade of the four sects and went up Mount Yao. South of Mount Yao, in an encampment between the clouds and the water, Bai Yinxiu and the three perfected masters flew out of their tents as soon as the buzzing sound came. They looked at the mountain in front of them expressionlessly, not too surprised. But when the wave of air came out again, the wind blew in front of their eyes. The four of them were stunned. Then they said in unison, "Yuan Qi of heaven and earth?" Immediately, the four of them ignored the others and sat down on the ground, silently operating the Heart Sutra in their hearts. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Bai Yinxiu was the first to open her eyes. She looked at the three teachers who still had their eyes closed to guide their qi. Then, she turned around and looked at the crowd on Mount Yao. A look of annoyance appeared on his face. After the time it takes to eat a meal, the three perfected masters between the clouds and the water opened their eyes. Perfected Master Hao Yun said with a smile, This immortal mansion is really amazing. It hasn't even been born yet, but the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth it spews out is already so dense. It's not much inferior to the immortal mansion recorded in the sect's ancient records. If we can cultivate in this immortal mansion, our cultivation can be expected. Senior brother is right. Not to mention the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth it spews out today, the amount of Yuan Qi of heaven and earth overflowing from Mount Yao is far more than what we have seen in our lives. The prosperity of the immortal mansion, perhaps it will be because of this immortal mansion. Since the three perfected masters have said so, then this disciple, all the previous arrangements, the three perfected masters, by Zhangmin, you don't have to say anymore. Previously, it's not that we didn't want the sect leader to covet the immortal mansion, but the sect leader has other actions. However, Bai Zhangmin is the sect leader between the clouds and the water. Everything in the sect is decided by the sect leader. Our opinions are only for reference. When the sect leader abandoned the Shindao sect and changed it to between the clouds and the water, we were just talking about it. Thank you for your tolerance. Bai Yinxiu smiled like a flower and said, However, I would like to ask the three perfected masters to enlighten me. This immortal mansion, when will it be born? Perfected Master Hao Yun smiled bitterly. Even Master Huan doesn't know the time. How can we know? Alas, in fact, what the immortal mansion looks like is not recorded in the sect's ancient records. We also don't know what it looks like. Is it similar to the Shindao sect? Senior brother, you're wrong. How can it be the same? If it's the same, why would we come here? I'm just talking about the scale. Look at Yao Mountain, it's only a few dozen miles. Even if it's all occupied. Hearing this, Bai Yinxiu was shocked. He looked at the whole Yao Mountain and whispered, Three perfected masters. I'm afraid the whole Yao Mountain is that. Immortal mansion. Oh, that's right. We're only thinking about the immortal mansion, but we've never thought about how it will be born. Will it fall from the sky, or will it come out from underground? If the whole Yao Mountain is the immortal mansion, it's understandable. When the time comes, as long as there's a door, it'll be enough. This is bad. This group of disciples from various sects are going back and forth on Yao Mountain. If they really find the door, it'll be terrible. Bai Zhangmin, didn't you also? Yes, perfected Master Hao Yu, I did send people, but the number was limited. Moreover, I mainly wanted to hide it from the incense cult and the Dawn Temple. When the immortal mansion is born, we'll have the upper hand. But now, because of this group of people, how can we have the upper hand? If that's the case, then it's time to clean up. Perfected Master Hao Feng looked at the disciples from various sects running around like flies and said coldly, "Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. If you like this work, you're welcome to come Chidian. Come to vote." Chapter 1154. West of Yao Mountain, in the Righteous Alliance's camp, in a rather large pavilion, a dozen people stood respectfully, facing the direction of Yao Mountain. Alliance Master Zhang San's face was gloomy as he sat on a gold-threaded Phoebe Jinan-wood chair, coldly looking at the people in front of him who had their heads bowed and did not dare to speak. Alliance Master Zhang San's face had been gloomy for several days. Ever since he came to Yao Mountain from the Righteous Path Peak and received some news about the Misty School, he had been gloomy since then. Everyone knew that the Alliance Master had not spoken for several days and was really angry. No one dared to step forward, afraid that, if they said something wrong, he would punish them. Picking up a teacup inlaid with golden threads, Alliance Master Zhang San drank a mouthful. Before it even entered his throat, he spat it out with a pu sound. Then, with a swing of his hand, the teacup was smashed to the ground, shattering into pieces. "Umph, what kind of tea is this? Is it for humans to drink?" Alliance Master Zhang San said angrily. "Yes, Alliance Master. This subordinate will immediately order my subordinates to find a good mountain spring." Vice Alliance Master Chai knew that Alliance Master Zhang San had spoken, so he could only bite the bullet and go forward. "Umph. Mountain spring water is easy to find, but the thousands of elite disciples of my Righteous Alliance are not easy to find. Vice Alliance Master Chai, can you tell me, how long will it take for my Righteous Alliance to nurture thousands of elite disciples?" Alliance Master Zhang San berated, "Also you all, can anyone tell me, that so-called immortal Tao expert, is he from the incense cult? He only killed my Righteous Alliance's disciples? Did he not care about the Misty School's disciples?" Alliance Master Zhang San was flustered and exasperated. He jumped up. "Also, my Righteous Alliance's Azure Flame token. Even our headquarters were taken by someone. I actually do not know who that person is. Also, where's the money I asked for? You all should give it to me? It will be winter soon. Next year, my Righteous Alliance will make a big move without money. How do you expect me to send out the disciples?" The crowd was in an uproar, and they all shrunk their necks and lowered their heads. "This, Alliance Master, don't be anxious. Although thousands of disciples are trapped in Ethereal Peak, they're still disciples of the Righteous Tao Alliance, and their martial arts have not been crippled. Even if they are imprisoned, once we find the Dharma treasure of the immortal Tao and pass by Ethereal Peak, we can either destroy the Misty School or force them to hand over my thousands of disciples." "Wouldn't that be the end of it?" Vice Alliance Master Chai did not want to speak, but if he didn't, who would? You have a nerve to say such words. When has my Righteous Tao Alliance ever suffered such a huge loss? Where am I supposed to put my face? Even if we destroy the entire Misty School, it will still be difficult to wash away this shame. That's right. If Alliance Leader Zhang is willing, our Righteous Tao Alliance will destroy the Misty School after we pass. Our elite disciples are already lying in ambush halfway. Vice Alliance Leader Chai agreed with Alliance Leader Zhang San. That's how it should be." Alliance Leader Zhang San laughed sinisterly. "Didn't that old beggar Jin not care about the Misty School? I'll let the whole pugilistic world see that our Righteous Tao Alliance is not inferior to the Immortal Tao Alliance." Vice Alliance Leader Me, who looked a little dispirited, suddenly became spirited and said, "That's exactly what we need to wash Ethereal Peak with blood. Only then can we save the face of our Righteous Tao Alliance." Alliance Leader, do you still need to say this? Although we don't have any evidence, that immortal Tao expert must be a consecrator of the incense cult. We'll only use ordinary disciples to kill them this time. I like to see how that immortal Tao expert will deal with them. But what about the monks of the Dahlin Temple? Vice Alliance Leader Yin, who looked a little hesitant, asked tentatively, Those bald donkeys are the most merciful. They've seen through our plans a few times, but they've been putting on a false front, killing and arson. Our righteous Tao Alliance's disciples were captured by the enemy, and we sent our disciples to rescue them. This reason makes sense to the whole pugilistic world. No matter how powerful the Dalan Temple is, it's still the Dalan Temple of the pugilistic world. They broke the rules for no reason. Alliance leader Zhang San sneered. Then, he looked at Yao Shan and laughed for no reason. I didn't expect this Zhang Xiaohu, who I've never heard of before, to have such skills. Vice Alliance leader Chai, you've made a mistake. Shui Yupeng, a hero of her generation, actually died in the hands of a nobody. Dying a heroic death? Bullshit. Didn't he just discover the relationship between Shui Yupeng and the Righteous Tao Alliance? But even if Shui Yupeng is still alive, there are 4 Vice Alliance leaders in the entire Misty School. There are 5 new halls, and Zhang Xiaohu has arranged for each hall leader. Even if Shui Yupeng is a Vice Alliance leader, he won't be able to do anything. If he doesn't contact the Righteous Tao Alliance's disciples, what else can he do? Hu Yuni, why did you come back? You might as well build your own Misty School outside. I'm sorry for my incompetence. I'm willing to accept any punishment. Vice Alliance leader Chai bowed and said, this subordinate originally thought that this Zhang Xiaohu was a puppet of the fragrance cult. Our Righteous Tao Alliance controlled Shui Yupeng to give her a taste of her own medicine, making the fragrance cult unable to speak of their suffering. I didn't expect Zhang Xiaohu to be so clever. Maybe the incense cult is clever. Alliance leader Zhang San sneered and waved his hand. The Misty School is just a chicken rib. If the Alliance is happy, we can destroy it with a wave of our hand. Let's take a look at this treasure first. Vice Alliance leader Yin, did the Righteous Tao Alliance's disciples on Yao Mountain find anything? Vice Alliance leader Yin shook his head. Alliance leader, there's nothing. We've searched for so long, but there's nothing. What about the disciples of the incense cult, the Dalan Temple, and between the clouds and the water? This. Vice Alliance leader Yan's expression was strange. They didn't even send any disciples up the mountain. What? Did they finish their investigation long ago? Alliance leader Zhang San was surprised. We came late and only occupied the west side. Did they already send their disciples up? Alliance leader, according to what I know, between the clouds and the water was the first to arrive, followed by the Dalan Temple, and then the incense cult. They only sent their disciples to guard the mountain path and didn't let any disciple from other sects go up the mountain. They didn't even send a single disciple. Vice Alliance leader Yin honestly reported what he knew. This is interesting. Alliance leader Zhang San said, pass down the order. Tell the disciples to be careful and not miss anything important. Yes, I understand. As he spoke, a buzzing sound came from Yao Mountain, and another burst of Yuan Qi came out. The wind blew Zhang San's white hair up. What is this? Vice Alliance leader Yin, send more people up there to take a look. Alliance leader Zhang San was very surprised by the sudden appearance of the hurricane and immediately ordered. On the east side of Yaoshan, the incense cult's leader, Nanjing Yi, sat upright in a wooden hut that could not be considered beautiful. On her left sat Nun Shuezhen and other inner disciples, while on her right sat several white-haired old priests. Shu Qing and Shu Jie, the 2 Taishang elders, were not among them. Jing Yi's face was full of joy. Looking at Yao Mountain outside the house, she smiled. Yao Mountain's grand event is even more attractive than my incense cult's martial arts convention. The appearance of the Immortal Mansion is really something to look forward to. Leader, between the clouds and the water, actually arrived much earlier than my incense cult. I'm afraid they already have news of the Immortal Mansion. Between the clouds and the water received the inheritance of the Shindao sect. The Shindao sect and my incense cult are both inheritances of the ancient path of immortality. No one can guarantee that they don't have records of the Immortal Mansion. As for the Shindao sect, between the clouds and the water was destroyed by us once. I'm sure They want the immortal mansion more than my incense cult. Leader, you're right. Anyone can get the immortal mansion, but not between the clouds and the water. If that bastard by Yinqiu gets it, I'm afraid he'll stir up another bloody storm in the Jianghu. Nun Shuezhen nodded. The appearance of incense cult brings chaos to the Jianghu. Our incense cult has just re-entered the Jianghu, and we've already encountered the immortal mansion. How can there be such a strange thing in this world? If there's no connection, how can we believe it? Jing Yi smiled. If the sect-protecting formation hadn't been activated, we wouldn't have been able to come out. Even if a few people could come to Yao Mountain, they wouldn't be of much use. What does this mean? It means that the Yao Mountain Immortal Mansion is fated to be with our incense cult? Maybe it's because the seniors of our incense cult saw through the implications and left such a prophecy. Peacock smiled. So, our incense cult is in the bag this time? Qinshin also smiled in surprise. Of course not. You can't say that. Any accident can happen. We have to be prepared to deal with anything, Jingyi said with a smile. Just like the Misty School, we only used Zhang Xiaohu as a chess piece, but this chess piece played such a big role. Not only did he reorganize the entire ethereal heights like an iron bucket, but he also subdued the group of people brought back by Hu Yuni. This is really beyond our expectations. Reporting to Sir Leader, although we didn't let Zhang Xiaohu's Misty School come, but he can't not report the matter of the Misty School to Sir Leader. Besides, even if Zhang Xiaohu didn't say anything, Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng would have said it. This ethereal heights is like an iron bucket. We don't know what's going on inside. It can't be. There's something unusual. Master Shuezhen frowned. Well, our sect. Didn't we already do something to Zhang Xiaohu? I think. He wouldn't dare to have any second thoughts. Master Jingyi smiled, but then she frowned and realized something. Junior sister Shuezhen, you're right. It seems, after Hu Yuni sent that disciple named Chu Yunfei to the ethereal heights, there hasn't been any news from the Misty School. Now that Hu Yuni has also entered the ethereal heights, Shui Yuping and Zhang Qingyue's direct disciple are there. It's bound to be lively. Although we can't see it, we should at least listen to it. Haha. I know that Sir Leader has been worried about the Immortal Mansion and doesn't care about the Misty School. So, I've already sent people to the ethereal heights to inquire about it. I think there will be news soon. Junior sister Shuezhen, you know me too well. Master Jing Yi smiled. At this time, the same buzzing sound and the explosion of the chi of heaven and earth made Master Jing Yi and Shu Qing, who was hiding behind the wooden hut, fly out. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Chapter 1155. Heaven and Earth Yuan Qi. Nanjing Yi, Shu Qing, and Shu Jie's expressions changed to that of pleasant surprise. The three of them flew in the air without moving. Their eyes were slightly closed, and they were actually absorbing Yuan Qi into their bodies in mid-air. Below them, a nervous outer disciple of the Misty School walked to a spot not far away. Not daring to move, he extended his arm and gestured to an inner disciple standing next to the wooden house. The inner disciple looked at Nanjing Yi and the others floating in the air, then tiptoed to the outer disciple. The outer disciple bowed, and the inner disciple nodded slightly. Then the outer disciple said something. However, the inner disciple's expression became more and more serious as the outer disciple reported. When the outer disciple finished, he bowed and left. The inner disciple was still frowning. Not daring to delay, he quietly walked to the front of the wooden house and looked at Nun Shuezhen, who was standing there looking up at the three people floating in the air. He opened his mouth to say something, but he didn't dare to make sound. He only pulled on Nun Shuezhen's sleeve and pointed to the side, indicating for her to go over. Nun Shuezhen was envious of Nun Jing Yi's immortal cultivation. Being pulled by the inner disciple made her unhappy, and her dissatisfaction was written all over her face. When they were about 10 feet away from the wooden house, Nun Shuezhen looked back and scolded in a low voice. "What's the matter? Can't you report later? Why now?" The inner disciple smiled bitterly. It's not that this disciple doesn't want to, but this news is too important. This disciple can't afford any delays. Eh. Nun Shuizhan was surprised. Tell me about it. When the inner disciple finished speaking, Nun Shuizhan's expression changed drastically. Are you telling the truth? The inner disciple shook his head. Reporting to Nun, this is what the outer disciple reported. This disciple didn't see it personally, but from what the outer disciple said, it's most likely true. How can this be? Nun Shuizhan shook her head repeatedly. Send another disciple to investigate. We must get to the bottom of this. Yes, disciple will head over now. Once the disciple was far away, Nun Shuizhan looked at Nun Jing-yi, who was still floating in the air. She let out a long sigh and muttered, when the fragrance spreads, the Jianghu will be in chaos. By the time Nun Jinshui returned to the wooden hut, the eruption of the qi of heaven and earth was over. The qi of heaven and earth was still dense at the foot of Yao Mountain. However, it was not much different from before the collapse of the incense cult's protective array. Shu Qing stopped her cultivation and landed on the ground. She said, Sect Master, this immortal mansion must be ours. If the incense cult obtains this immortal mansion, our immortal Tao will be within reach. The incense cult will definitely suppress the Tenryu sect. Then, the two of them flew to the back of the wooden house and meditated. Nun Jing-yi landed on the hill with a look of pleasant surprise on her face. She waved her hand, indicating for everyone to follow her back to the wooden house. Everyone, have you seen it? Nun Jing-yi smiled. That hurricane just now brought with it a fresh and lively aura. That's the qi of heaven and earth, which is what the immortal Tao relies on. The immortal mansion hasn't even appeared yet, but there's already so much qi of heaven and earth erupting. Who knows what kind of immortal pills and elixirs are inside? Perhaps there's a pill that can pull everyone into the immortal Tao. Junior sister Shuizhan. Yes, Sect Master, Nun Shuizhan replied. Did Yao Mountain's arrangement leave anything out? Regardless of the price, the incense cult must obtain this immortal mansion. Sect Master, Sect Master, Sect Master, Sect Master, Sect Master. Sect Master has made all the necessary arrangements, but Nun Jingyi frowned and said unhappily, Is there anything else that's inappropriate? Let's hear it. No, Sect Master, Sect Master, Sect Master. I just received a message from an outer disciple. That Misty School has undergone a great change. What? Great change? Nun Jing-yi was also stunned. Could it be that the Righteous Alliance has launched a surprise attack on the Misty School? It seems Zhang San is still on the west side of Yao Mountain, and he's not worried about Yao Mountain at the moment. Why would he go find trouble with the Misty School? Isn't that picking up sesame seeds and throwing away watermelons? Nun Jing-yi said so much in one breath that Nun Shuizhan could not interrupt for a while. After Nun Jing-yi finished speaking, Nun Shuizhan sighed and said, If the Righteous Alliance launches a surprise attack on the Misty School now, that would be good. I'm afraid that the Righteous Alliance will also suffer a great loss. The Righteous Alliance may have no chance of obtaining the immortal mansion of Yao Mountain. Chen Chen exclaimed. When did the Misty School become so powerful? Nun Shuizhan glanced at the future master of Raging Hall and said, According to the outer disciple, the leader of the Misty School, Zhang Xiao, is now an immortal Tao cultivator. Impossible. Without waiting for Chen Chen to speak, Nun Jing-yi refuted. Zhang Xiao hasn't even mastered the martial arts of the Misty School. My fragrant sect Yuhuan Sutra has only been practiced for a few days. Not to mention 3 Yuhuan pills. Even 300 Yuhuan pills won't let him set foot on the immortal Tao. Whether it's the immortal Tao or not, I don't know. That outer disciple doesn't know either. He just captured a disciple of the Misty School and used some means to interrogate her. I knew it. Zhang Xiaohu can't set foot on the immortal Tao. This is just a cover released by the Misty School. Presumably, that Misty School disciple was deliberately captured by us outer disciples. That's right, Master Shuizhen. You believe the outer disciples too much. If it's so easy to set foot on the immortal Tao, my fragrant sect, why would I worry about passing down the legacy? Why would I waste my time coming to Yao Mountain? Chen laughed. When Peacock heard this, she frowned slightly. No one knew what she was thinking. When Yin saw that her master's expression was not good, she thought for a moment and said, reporting to Sir Leader, it can't be so absolute. When the Misty sect attacked the Misty Peak, there were people from the immortal Tao helping them. Others thought that it was my fragrant religion who helped, but we knew that the people from the immortal Tao had nothing to do with the fragrant religion. But if we think about it this way, what if we think further? Then, is the immortal Tao related to the Misty School? If it's really related to the Misty School, like what Sir Leader said, give them some elixir or something. Who knows? Maybe they can pull Zhang Xiaohu into the immortal Tao. Sister Yin, what you said is a novel idea. If it was in ancient times, it might be the same. But now that the immortal Tao has existed for tens of thousands of years, where is the elixir that you mentioned? Even if there is, it's probably in the immortal mansion of Yao Mountain and won't appear in the world. Relying on an immortal Tao expert to step into the immortal Tao is really inconceivable. If it's possible, why do you and I have to think so hard in the Heritage Palace? Why don't we just ask the Grand Elder to give us a hand, and we'll have everything? Chun retorted. Sister, I'm just giving Sir Leader an idea. Yin blushed a little. What Yin said makes sense, but it's almost impossible. Nun Jingyi sighed and said, even if there's an elixir, there needs to be a corresponding heart sutra. Zhang Xiaohu also needs to have a certain level of immortal Tao cultivation. If he takes it rashly, his meridians will explode and he'll die. It could only be that the expert had an extremely high cultivation of the immortal Tao and had come to help Zhang Xiaohu and the immortal Tao expert. In this immortal Tao, they all preserve their cultivation and treasure the true qi in their meridians, never interfering with worldly affairs. For example, most people don't know that we have two Grand Elders. If it weren't for the immortal mansion, we wouldn't have disturbed them. So, the immortal Tao expert shouldn't waste his true qi for Zhang Xiaohu. Besides, if the immortal Tao expert is really related to the Misty School, he should have appeared a few years ago when the Misty School was destroyed, and not just now. Sir Leader, I'm a little curious. Peacock said before, I've never seen any immortal Tao expert in the Jianghu. In the past few years, immortal Tao experts have appeared frequently. Just from what we know, there's someone who looks very similar to Senior Huan and Huanshu, the person who killed the Longting Villa in Rejuvenation Valley, and the person who killed Ban Fuguei in Misty Peak. The former aside, only junior sister Xiaqing has seen his face. The latter two are seen by dozens and thousands of people. They look similar, which means there's at least one and at most 3 immortal Tao experts. Where do they come from? Sigh this. Who would know? Nun Jingyi shook her head. Actually, Peacock isn't right. Although you've never heard of immortal Tao experts in the Jianghu, it doesn't mean there aren't any. Take the Dalan Temple, for example. The previous abbot, Master Yuantian, was also an immortal Tao expert, just like the current Master Changsheng. Although he was a little different from the previous Sakura, he was still considered one of the top experts in the Jianghu. Even so, he was seriously injured by a masked immortal Tao expert and died from his injuries. There's such a thing. Peacock was shocked. Yes, so not knowing doesn't mean they don't exist. Almost everyone in the Jianghu doesn't know about the 2 immortal Tao experts, and we've never mentioned them. But that doesn't mean the 2 immortal Tao experts. Then, Sir Leader, what do you mean? Nun Shuizhen asked. Let's investigate further. It's best if Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng come here, so we can ask them properly. If it's really as the outer sect disciple said, then the Misty School is really giving us a headache. Nun Jingyi said thoughtfully. Leader, that disciple also said that Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng of the Incense sect, as well as Wang Luan and Lu Bin of the Righteous Alliance, seem to have been subdued by Zhang Xiaohu. They listened to Zhang Xiaohu's every word and never refute. How did it end up like this? Nun Jingyi was extremely puzzled. Even if Zhang Xiaohu has the cultivation of the path of immortals, I am certain that when he was at Lingering Fragrance Peak, he was definitely not at the path of immortals. It has only been a few months, and he was able to subdue Ming Qing. Ming Qing still has more than 2,000 Wuming Hall disciples of the incense sect. Ming Qing only needs to give the order, and these 2,000 disciples will definitely kill their way out of ethereal heights. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote. Chapter 1156. Junior Sister Xuezhen, quickly send a disciple to the Misty School. Have Ming Qing, Gao Kunheng, or Zhang Xiaohu come to Yaoshan. Oh, forget about Zhang Xiaohu. Have one of them come. We'll know what's going on if we ask them. Besides, our focus isn't on the Misty School. As long as we get our hands on the Yaoshan Immortal Abode, we'll be able to take care of the Misty School, Nun Jing, Yi said calmly. Yes, I understand. Nun Xuezhen replied. However, leader, you should plan ahead. If that Zhang Xiaohu is really an immortal, he might even avenge the Misty School. Avenge? Nun Jing, Yi sneered. Even if he's an immortal, how could he be a match for us? At this moment, another disciple came up to report. Leader, between the clouds and the water has sent a disciple here. He wants me to go to the campsite between the clouds and the water. He says he has something important to discuss. What does Bai Yinxiu want now? Nun Jing, Yi frowned. This is her first time at Yaoshan. Now she wants to take charge of the Yaoshan Immortal Abode? Then he asked, other than asking me to spread the incense cult, who else was invited? Leader, there's also the Alliance of Righteous Path and the Dalan Temple. Peacock, you go. Go and take a look on my behalf. I don't think the Dalan Temple's Master Chang Sheng or Zhang San of the Alliance of Righteous Path will be there. Nun Jing, he said. Yes, disciple obeys. Peacock stood up. While you're at between the clouds and the water, I have something to do. Nun Jing, he said thoughtfully. Peacock went to the tent between the clouds and the water. Just as Nun Jing expected, the Alliance of Righteous Path had sent Vice Alliance Leader Chai, and the Dalan Temple had sent Great Master Changgang. Inside the tent, other than Bai Yinxiu, Liang Sangxiu, and a few other disciples, Hao Yunjinren and the other two were nowhere to be seen. After greeting everyone, Peacock carefully sat on Vice Alliance Leader Chai's lap. She looked at the Great Master Changgang and Vice Alliance Leader Chai, and asked Bai, I wonder why Bai Zhangmin has asked me to preach the incense. Sect? Of course, Bai Yinxiu looked at Peacock and smiled. I did not invite all of you here to drink tea and chat. I do have something important that I need your help with. Peacock looked at the Great Master Changgang and said nothing. The Great Master Changgang put his palms together and said, if there's anything we can help with, please tell us, Bai Zhangmin. It's like this. Mount Yao. Bai Yinxiu looked at the three of them, paused, and said, according to the rumors in Jianghu, Mount Yao is about to have a treasure of the immortal path. Although I don't know what it is, based on my observations, it should be something incredible. Bai Zhangmin is right. Vice Alliance Leader Chai nodded. It should be an earth-shattering treasure. Yes, that's exactly it. I think so too. Bai Yinxiu nodded seriously and replied. However, since it's a treasure of the immortal Tao, it's useless for ordinary Jianghu people to obtain it. They might even cause some trouble for no reason, or even cause a bloody storm. In my opinion, since this treasure is useless to ordinary martial artists, then for the sake of the stability of Jianghu, we shouldn't let ordinary martial artists participate in this. Bai Zhangmin, why does it sound so awkward? Vice Alliance Leader Chai smirked. Vice Alliance Leader Chai, I'm only talking about ordinary martial artists. The Righteous Alliance has already won a seat in the Huayu Peak Martial Arts Assembly. Of course, they have the right to participate in this treasure of Mount Yao. Of course. Vice Alliance Leader Chai nodded. Then, Bai Zhangmin means to chase away all the martial artists who are here? Peacock asked. How is that possible? Bai Yinxiu said. They're already here. Even if we ask them to leave, they won't. Even if they walk for a few miles, they will stop and observe the situation at Mount Yao. Then, what's Bai Zhangmin's plan? Great Master Changgung asked curiously. What I'm saying is that the treasure hunt at Mount Yao should be led by the four sects of the Immortal Path. We will search for it first. If we're not fated, then the other martial arts sects will be allowed to participate. What do you all think? Great idea. Great Master Changgung clapped his hands. This way, we can reduce the number of killings and fair distribution. I agree. I have no objections. Vice Alliance leader Chai nodded. But how should we do it? Peacock smiled. If the method is suitable, then Incense Sect will have no objections. In my opinion, there are too many disciples from different sects on Mount Yao. Not only is it chaotic, but the treasure of the Immortal Path has always had a spirit. If their misdeeds disturb the treasure of the Immortal Path and cause it to no longer appear, then wouldn't our efforts be in vain? Since Mount Yao is so chaotic, then let the disciples of the various sects leave first. They've been searching for so long and have not found it. I'm sure they're not fated. Let's clear them out first. Then we'll slowly search the peak of Mount Yao inch by inch. No matter which side of Mount Yao the treasure is on, one of them will be able to get it. Treasures could only be obtained by the virtuous. It was the will of the heavens that each of the four sects of the Tao of Immortals occupied one side of Mount Yao. No one knew which side of Mount Yao the treasure was. It would belong to whoever obtained it, and the other three sects had no objections. What do you all think? Peacock thought for a moment. Bai Zhongmin is right. I agree. However, I'll have to go back and report to the hierarch. She'll make the decision. The other two also said the same thing. Bai Yinxiu had expected this. He smiled. Don't worry, don't worry. You can go back and report to the hierarch. After 3 hours, if none of you send disciples over, then I'll take it that you agree with between the clouds and the water. Then, I'll send an ultimatum to the people on Mount Yao. They have 4 hours to leave the mountain. After that, we'll send our disciples up the mountain and begin the search. What if they still refuse to leave the mountain? Vice Alliance leader Chai asked. Then, before the four sects of the Immortal Path go up the mountain, we'll do a cleansing. Anyone who refuses to leave Mount Yao will be killed without mercy. Bai Yinxiu said coldly. Killed without mercy? Hee. Vice Alliance leader Chai sneered. Great Master Changgung couldn't bear it. He put his palms together and said, Amit Ba. Also, there are many sects around Mount Yao. If the four sects of the Immortal Path don't restrain them, I'm afraid it'll cause a lot of trouble. Therefore, between the clouds and the water suggest that we form a law enforcement team with our disciples to maintain order around Mount Yao. Of course, the law enforcement team can be led by anyone. Great Master Changgung looked at the others and nodded. I think this is a good idea. The people of Jianghu are intertwined with each other. It's hard to say who has a grudge against each other. We might not see each other on a regular basis. Now that we're all gathered together, how can we not cause trouble? It's okay if they cause trouble, but let's not delay our business. Peacock didn't agree immediately. She smiled and said, I think it's a good idea as well. However, we'll have to report this to our hierarch. Then let's report it together. Vice Leader Chai felt uncomfortable listening to Bai Yinxiu talk about the four sects of the Immortal Path. But he couldn't say anything, so he waved his hand impatiently. Then I'll wait here for your reply. Bai Yinxiu stood up to send them off. After the three of them left, Bai Yinxiu ordered, Liang Sangshu, gather the sect's elites and estimate the size of the foothills to the south. Be sure to get rid of these annoying flies as soon as possible. Yes, I understand. Liang Sangshu replied from afar. Bai Yinxiu looked at the verdant Mount Yao, his face glowing with excitement. When Chang'e returned to the incense cult's encampment, Nun Jing wasn't in the wooden house. Nun Xuezhen heard Chang'e's words and frowned. She asked curiously, when did between the clouds and the water become so proactive? They came early. Why didn't they do anything? Why did they have to wait until the four sects gathered? Is it because they don't want to bear the evil reputation? However, the matter of the enforcement team can be considered. According to the report of the outer sect disciples, many people have died around Mount Yao. If it weren't for the temptation of the immortal mansion, wouldn't the sects have already fought each other? I'm sure the hierarch will agree. I'll give the order now. Thank you for your trouble. Nun Shuezhen. I think so too. Chang'e nodded. After a long time, Nun Jing still hadn't returned. Seeing that the incense sticks time was almost up, Chang'e couldn't help but ask, Nun Shuezhen, I wonder, where did the hierarch go? It's almost time to meet between the clouds and the water. Well, Nun Shuezhen hesitated and said, the hierarch didn't say where he was going. He went out alone. I think he went to the Dalan Temple's encampment in the north of Mount Yao. Well, Chang'e didn't know whether she should send someone to look for him or report it herself. But then, Chang'e's eyes lit up and her heart calmed down a lot. She looked back at Nun Shuezhen and said with a smile, Nun Shuezhen, I'll have to trouble you to tell the outer sect disciples to gather at the foot of Mount Yao, except for those on duty. For hours later, when there's news from between the clouds and the water, we'll immediately go up the mountain and capture all the disciples of the sects on the west side of Mount Yao, seal their major acupoints, and send them to between the clouds and the water. Nun Shuezhen was stunned and stopped her. Chang'e, shouldn't we wait for the hierarch to return first? Haha, Nun Shuezhen, the hierarch is at the Dalan Temple's encampment. Great Master Chang'e went back to report it. How could she not know? Since she hasn't returned yet, I should be the one to make the decision. Nun Shuezhen patted her forehead and said with a smile, Look at me. I've always followed the hierarch's lead. I forgot that I should listen to your opinions in the future. I don't dare. I'm still young and have a lot to learn from you, Nun Shuezhen. I'll have to trouble Nun Shuezhen to point out my shortcomings. Chapter 1157. I wouldn't dare. I'm just good at handling chores, but I'm far from being far-sighted. Abbess Shuezhen waved her hands. Details determine success or failure. I need someone as meticulous as you, Chang'e said with a smile. Then Chang'e added, Also, I'll have to trouble you to send someone to inform between the clouds and the water that I'll help them clean up Yao Mountain. I'll send you a message about the law enforcement team later. Yes, I'll do it right away. Abbess Shuezhen was pleased to see Chang'e handle things in an orderly manner. She cupped her hands and left. Not long after, in front of between the clouds and the water's camp on the south side of Yao Mountain, a huge blood-red signal flew into the air. Then a voice sounded from the foot of Yao Mountain. Disciples of all sects on Yao Mountain, listen up. From now on, leave the mountain immediately. If you're still on a mountain within 4 hours, you'll have to bear the consequences. This voice must have been spoken by someone with strong internal energy. The voice traveled so far that even the people on the peak of Yao Mountain should be able to hear it. Soon after, similar cries could be heard from the other 3 sides of Yao Mountain. The cries continued for 3 times before they stopped. Haha, Chang'e, have you sent your disciples out? Chang'e was sitting on a chair, deep in thought. Abbess Jing Yi's voice sounded. Her expression seemed to be much more relaxed than when Chang'e left. Yes, sect leader. I've made arrangements on my own. Please, Chang'e said in a panic. Haha, of course not. Abbess Jing raised her hand and interrupted Chang'e. I asked you to come to Yao Mountain to train you. If you can't even make a decision on such a small matter, how can I be at ease handing over the incense cult to you? Yes, I understand. Chang'e nodded. But I don't understand. Why did between the clouds and the water make a move at this time? What's so hard to understand? Abbess Jing smiled. If it were me, I wouldn't think about it. Sometimes, when you think about too many things, you'll be afraid. You're right, sect leader. But I'm young and inexperienced. I still want to think about it and come up with a countermeasure. Yes, you're right. Back then, our sect didn't have the same passion for research as you. Nun Jing praised. However, when you think about it, between the clouds and the water is ranked last among the 4 immortal sects, aside from the Misty School. Now that the Misty School hasn't come, and this is the first time between the clouds and the water has made an appearance in Jianghu, she must be feeling uneasy. She doesn't want to bear the notoriety of offending the entire Jianghu, so she can only rely on us to have some confidence. This disciple had the same thought earlier, but I suddenly feel that something is wrong. But I don't know what exactly is wrong. It's as if I can sense where the door is, but I can't see it. At this point, Chang'e exclaimed. Even Abbess Jing Yi's expression changed. She stood up and said, "That's right. That's it. By Yinxiu, this bastard. He actually... By the way, is the disciple I sent to Mount Qing ready?" Abbess Jing Yi hurriedly instructed. "This disciple has already arranged for the outer sect disciples to wait in front of the mountain, except for those on duty." Chang'e replied immediately. "That's not enough. Have the inner sect disciples who have nothing to do go as well. Also, send some outer sect male disciples to change their attire and go to the other sides of Mount Yao, especially the south side." Abbess Jing Yi ordered. "Yes, this disciple will go and give the order right away." Chang'e bowed and left, but returned after a while. Looking at Abbess Jing Yi's gloomy expression, he asked tentatively, "Sect leader, isn't it a bit inappropriate for Between the Clouds and the Water to occupy the south side of Mount Yao?" "Hee, that's exactly the case. Chang'e, you are very good. You actually thought so much. Even our sect, Sai, even Master Longevity and Alliance Leader Zhang Xin didn't think of this." Abbess Jing Yi nodded and said, "It was said in ancient times that there are 4 divine beasts between heaven and earth. These 4 divine beasts are related to directions: the azure dragon of the east, the white tiger of the west, the vermilion bird of the south, the black tortoise of the north, and the yellow true dragon of the middle. That's why the immortal Tao Palace is located in the north facing the south, emphasizing the azure dragon on the left and the white tiger on the right. Didn't you see that my Mo Xin Palace is also located in the north facing the south?" "Yes, this disciple just suddenly thought of it. That's why I was surprised." Chang'e nodded. "Also, this old woman was careless. I was only thinking about how the immortal mansion was unearthed. Between the Clouds and the Water's actions made this old woman realize that Mount Yao couldn't be an immortal mansion. If Mount Yao is an immortal mansion, then the exit must be in the south of Mount Yao. Between the Clouds and the Water occupies the south side of Mount Yao, so it naturally has a reason to find the exit first." Chang'e suddenly understood. And Between the Clouds and the Water allowed others to search the mountain for a long time, so they probably just thought of the key point. "Exactly. That's why let the male disciples fish in troubled waters. Maybe they'll find something. Otherwise, if Between the Clouds and the Water finds the exit quietly, wouldn't we have come in vain?" Nanjing Yi's somewhat relaxed mood just now became bad again. She looked outside and said, "Where's the Misty School? What's the news?" Chang'e was stunned and said in a low voice, "Sect leader, the outer sect disciples have just received the order. I'm afraid the news won't come until tomorrow." Sigh. It's really one trouble after another. Why are they all gathered together? At this moment, a voice sounded from the south side of Mount Yao. "Disciples of various sects on Mount Yao, there's not much time left. There's only 1 hour left. Come down quickly. If you don't obey the order, you'll have to bear the consequences." Sect leader, it doesn't seem to be that fast," Chang'e said in surprise. If it were up to me, why would I give them 4 hours? I'll chase them away as soon as I see them. After all, no one can guarantee that there won't be any accidents during this period of time." Sure enough, in less than an hour, another signal came from the south side of Mount Yao. Chang'e looked up at Nanjing Yi and saw that there were still many disciples of various sects on Mount Yao. She said coldly, "Go, tell the disciples to go up and clean up. Kill those who should be killed. Since these disciples of various sects have just come up from the incense cult's defense, it means they don't put us in their eyes. Moreover, our disciples have already shouted at the foot of the mountain. We've already done our duty." Sect leader, kill without mercy? Chang'e was a little hesitant. "Yes, kill without mercy." Nanjing Yi didn't hesitate and waved her hand. "In Jianghu, it's either you die or I live. How can there be so much mercy? I brought you out to see some of the real Jianghu. Yes, this disciple understands." Chang'e retreated. Not long after, the disciples of Incense Cult, the Alliance of Righteous Tao, the Dalan Temple, and Between the Clouds and the Water all took out their weapons and rushed up Mount Yao. Immediately, screams came from the 3 sides of Mount Yao. The disciples of various sects who were still on Mount Yao and didn't want to come down because they wanted to see what was going on before making a decision were now filled with regret. They wished they had followed the disciples who had already gone down the mountain and left obediently. It seemed that it was too late to leave now. A disciple of Cheonghua Island heard the screams not far away and saw the disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water using their lightness skills. He immediately threw down the weapon in his hand and stood there obediently with his hands raised high. At the same time, he shouted, "Senior brothers, it's my fault. I'll go down the mountain now. If I don't come up here," before he could finish his words, two disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water closed in on him. Without saying anything, they swung their sabers and chopped at him. They turned a deaf ear to the disciples' words. The pitiful disciple had originally held onto some hope, but when he saw the cold gleam of the two sabers striking his body, he realized that what the Shuiyun Den had said just now was true. They wanted to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. With two slashing sounds, the two disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water didn't mind the unarmed disciple of Cheonghua Island running away. They had already blocked all the possible escape routes. The two sabers hit the vital parts of the disciple's body. The body of the disciple of Cheonghua Island went limp. His face was still filled with regret. He died on the spot. The two disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water didn't even look when they saw that the disciple was cut down. They directly stepped over the corpse and chased after the others. However, what they didn't notice was that the corpse of the disciple of Cheonghua Island was lying on the ground. The wounds caused by the sabers were dripping with blood. Drop by drop, the blood slid down the skin and dripped on the ground. This should have been normal. However, after a while, the blood that should have been decreasing didn't coagulate. Instead, it increased. Drop by drop, it turned into streams of blood that flowed onto the ground. What was even more strange was that the blood didn't stop when it dripped onto the lush grass. Instead, it directly seeped into the ground, leaving no trace behind. Not long after, the corpse of the disciple of Cheonghua Island became pale and slightly dry. This strange phenomenon didn't only happen to the corpse of the disciple of Cheonghua Island. All the disciples of the other sects who were killed were the same. However, the disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water were killing the disciples of the other sects on the mountain. The disciples of the other sects were running away in panic. Who would care about such a small matter that no one knew about? At this moment, everyone at the foot of Yao Mountain realized that the four sects were really going to be ruthless. The people of the other sects were dumbfounded. They thought that the law doesn't punish the masses. Although the four sects of the immortal Tao were powerful, they wouldn't go against the entire Jianghu. They miscalculated the determination of the four sects of the immortal Tao to get the immortal mansion. They also miscalculated the situation they were in. Naturally, they would have to pay the price with blood. However, they definitely wouldn't dare to rush up Yao Mountain to save people. In the midst of the emergency, they suddenly heard that people were going up to clean up the four sides of Yao Mountain. However, there were no screams coming from the north side of the Dalan Temple. Quick, let's go to the Dalan Temple and ask the elders to uphold justice. This killing people like scything flax is simply a demonic method. A sect elder shouted. Yes, let's go. Even if we can't stop them, we have to make the disciples on the mountain run to the Dalan Temple. Everyone came to a realization. Chapter 1158. Thus, a group of people with profound inner strength began to shout at the foot of Yao Mountain, hoping that the fleeing disciples of the various sects would hear them and head to the north of Yao Mountain. But, not to mention whether they could hear them, even if they did, how could their inner strength compare to the disciples of the three immortal sects? Another group of people anxiously rode their horses to the Dalan Temple's encampment at the north of Yao Mountain. In front of the simple and crude encampment of the Dalan Temple, there was already a dense crowd of people. At the front of the crowd were a few agitated old men. They grabbed the sleeves of the monks on duty and pleaded, "Little master, let my mother see Grandmaster Chong Sheng. My boy is on Yao Mountain. He is the sole heir of our Sure family for 3 generations. The mission of bringing glory to our sure family rests on his shoulders. If anything happens to him, our sure family will be finished. That's right, little master. Please take pity on us. That grandson of mine was just curious for a moment, so he went up the mountain to play. He said he would come down in a while, but I'm afraid he went too far. The Righteous Alliance's disciples are only halfway up the mountain. If Grandmaster Longevity appears, my grandson should be saved. The people in front all had blood relatives on the mountain. They were also young and impetuous, so they didn't listen to the cries of the four sections. When their relatives at the foot of the mountain saw the massacre on the mountain, they ran to the Dalan Temple to ask Grandmaster Chong Sheng of the Dalan Temple to uphold justice. The monks of the Dalan Temple held wooden sticks in their hands and stood there expressionlessly. They blocked the entrance of the Dalan Temple's encampment and didn't let anyone in. As the clamor grew louder, finally, an old monk walked past a big tree in the distance. When he came closer, everyone recognized him as Grandmaster Chong Sheng. Everyone was delighted and shouted, "Grandmaster Chong Sheng is merciful. Quickly save our disciples. They are young and ignorant and offended the four immortal sections. Grandmaster, please spare their lives. When we bring them home, we will definitely punish them severely. Grandmaster, if you save our disciples, our Xian Xie school will definitely erect a statue of you in our school. We will burn incense and kowtow to you every day. That's right. Master Chongqing is a Buddha in all homes. This kind of small matter, isn't it a piece of cake?" Reverend Chongqing forced a smile and walked forward. He put his palms together and said, "Benefactors, please calm down. Our Dalan Temple has always been merciful. If we can save people, we will save them. However, Yao Mountain has 4 sides, and my Dalan Temple only occupies the northern side. The other 3 sides are occupied by the incense cult between the clouds and the water and the Righteous Alliance. I'm afraid my Dalan Temple cannot interfere with the affairs of the other sections. The treasure on Mount Yao has been quiet for many days now, and there are no signs of it being unearthed. Furthermore, the disciples of the various sects have been rashly heading up the mountain in search of treasure. It's already a mess, and if there's any movement, wouldn't it lead to a huge storm? Therefore, when Bai Zhangmen of Between the Clouds and the Water proposed to clean up the disciples of Yao Mountain, my Dalan Temple and the other 2 sects agreed. However, Between the Clouds and the Water's methods were too ruthless. My Dalan Temple's Master Chong Sheng couldn't bear to see bloodshed. As early as 4 hours before Between the Clouds and the Water's shout, he had already sent many disciples and lay disciples up the mountain to persuade the disciples of the various sects to return to the northern side of Yao Mountain. However, as you all have seen, no matter how the disciples of my Dalan Temple try to persuade them, not a single person came down. Now, take a look again. My Dalan Temple has not killed a single person. Instead, it has accommodated the disciples of the other 3 sides. Since Between the Clouds and the Water, the Righteous Alliance, and the incense cult began to kill people, the disciples of the various sects on the northern side of Yao Mountain, has not a single person come down. Everyone, my Dalan Temple is one of the 4 sects of the path of immortality, but it is only one of them. My Dalan Temple is merciful and has left a path of survival for the disciples of the various sections. However, this path of survival must be taken by someone. Just now, Grandmaster Longevity made it clear that my Dalan Temple will protect the disciples of the other 3 sects before they find out. If the other sect discover that the surviving disciples have gathered at the northern side of the Dalan Temple, I'm afraid even my Dalan Temple won't be able to bear the consequences. While Grandmaster Longevity Fortune was explaining, the crowd looked up. Sure enough, more and more people were gathering at the northern side of Yao Mountain. However, not a single person came down. The monks of the Dalan Temple held weapons in their hands and only whispered words of persuasion. They didn't move. Those people, whether they were already at the northern side or had fled from the other 2 sides, turned a deaf ear to their words. There were even some disciples of the various sects who were gesticulating. The crowd watched from afar and didn't know what to say. At this time, someone from the back of the crowd shouted, "The Dahlin Temple really doesn't live up to its reputation. I thought Grandmaster Longevity Fortune was merciful and would take it upon himself to save the disciples of the various sections. But now it seems that he is also under pressure from the other sections. Since that's the case, why do we still need to beg him? Why don't we band together? I don't believe that only the 4 immortal Tao sects have the right to speak in the entire pugilistic world. Are all my other sects just puppets? That's right, that's right. We should also form an alliance and advance and retreat together. We won't have to give face to the 4 immortal Tao sects." The crowd was noisy again. Some were anxious to seek help, while others had ulterior motives. In the end, apart from a dozen or so people who had relatives on Yao Mountain who stayed in front of the Dahlin Temple's camp, most of the others left in a hurry. Watching the crowd leave in a hurry, Grandmaster Longevity Fortune sighed for no reason. He put his palms together and murmured, "Ba, I've sinned, I've sinned." Then he turned around and walked to a tree in the distance. He turned around a few old pine trees. Under the shade of the trees, Grandmaster Longevity, Great Master Changgung, and a few old monks sat cross-legged. Some of them held prayer beads in their hands, while others held wooden fish in their hands. All of them had a profound look on their faces as they recited sutras with their eyes closed. Under another cypress tree, not far from them, the 3 grandmasters, Yuan Dao, Yuan Ming, and Yuan Wu, were using the abundant qi of heaven and earth in Yao Mountain to draw qi into their bodies. Hearing that Grandmaster Longevity Fortune had returned, Grandmaster Longevity Fortune opened his eyes. He looked around and said in a low voice, "How is it? Junior brother Chongqing, have they dispersed?" Ba, reporting to Abbot, "They have dispersed, but it seems there's still some trouble." Grandmaster Longevity Fortune recounted what had happened just now. In the end, he said, "There seems to be some people with bad intentions in this group. They want to use this as an opportunity to incite some heroes of the pugilistic world to go against the 4 immortal Tao sects. Abbot, how should we deal with them? Cause is cause, effect is effect. You have to reap what you sow. Junior brother Chongqing, didn't you see? All of Mount Yao is sowing the seeds of karma. Now that the seeds have been sown, no matter how much we worry, no matter how much we meddle, what can we do to stop the karma? Perhaps we'll be able to reap the fruit soon. Yes, many thanks for the abbot's teachings." Grandmaster Longevity Fortune said in a low voice, "Senior brother Chongqing, don't feel bad. Between the clouds and the water is certainly ruthless, but there was some leeway before. Even the Dahlin Temple has shouted at the foot of the mountain countless times. If the people on the mountain knew when to advance or retreat, they would have come down long ago. But look, the knife is already on their necks. They're still thinking about their immortal fate. They've been forced to come to the Dahlin Temple. They're still unrepentant, ignoring the door of convenience in front of them. How can the Dahlin Temple change this kind of fate? There are still thousands of lives. This old monk can't bear it." Grandmaster Longevity Fortune said with a shake of his head, "They don't cherish their own lives. Why should we cherish them for them?" Great Master Changgung disagreed. "Go, inform the disciples on the mountain to rush down from the top of the mountain. If there's anyone who doesn't obey, seal their acupoints and kick them down Mount Yao. If there's anyone who relies on their superior lightness skills to escape from the gaps between the Dahlin Temple's disciples and stays on Mount Yao, when the Dahlin Temple's disciples come up again to search for treasures, kill them without mercy." Without waiting for Grandmaster Longevity Fortune to speak, he continued, "Junior brother Chongqing, this is the Dahlin Temple's origin returning tribulation. Even the 3 martial uncles have come to face the tribulation. If you and I don't take the initiative, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Abbot, we're lucky." Grandmaster Longevity Fortune said no more. Not long after, a disciple passed the Grandmaster Longevity Fortune's words to Mount Yao. At this time, in the north of Mount Yao, besides the monks of the Dahlin Temple, there were only the lay disciples of the Dahlin Temple. The monks were easy to deal with as they studied Buddhist scriptures and had good tempers. They were easy to negotiate with the disciples of the various sections. The lay disciples were different. There were many conflicts with the disciples of the various sections. However, because the Grandmaster Longevity Fortune didn't give the order, they didn't dare to act rashly and could only endure. This tolerance made the disciples of the various sects even more arrogant. Not only did they ignore the rules of the Dalan Temple, they even cursed and scolded them indirectly. After hearing the abbot's order, the Dalan Temple disciples looked at each other and didn't say a word. They turned around and went straight to the top of the mountain. Then they used their lightness skills and went down the mountain. This time, when they met the disciples of the various sects, they didn't show any mercy. Without saying a word, they sealed their acupoints and kicked them down the mountain. Every time they kicked, they didn't kick far. The disciples only fell and bled, but they weren't afraid of losing their lives. Just as the Grandmaster Longevity Fortune predicted, there were indeed some clever people. While the Dalan Temple monks were arresting others, they escaped through the gaps. The Dalan Temple monks didn't chase after them. Those people thought they had succeeded and immediately ran away, looking for places they hadn't been to before. It seemed that the celestial instruments were like copper coins that had fallen on the ground. As long as you lowered your head, you could see them. Another 2 hours passed, and the screams on Mount Yao gradually died down. The disciples of the three sects began to clean up the scattered corpses on Mount Yao one by one. Although all the corpses were deathly pale, and their bodies were completely drained of blood, who would pay attention to that? Even if they did, they wouldn't make a fuss about it. After all, Jianghu was a bloody place. On the north side of Mount Yao, the Dalan Temple monks had driven nearly 2,000 disciples from the various sects down the mountain. Every one of them had a bloody nose and a swollen face. When the Dalan Temple monks unsealed their acupoints, they were still cursing and spouting nonsense. Great Master Changgung saw this and snorted. He waved his hand and said, "Guardian disciples, quickly go up Mount Yao and clean up the north side of the mountain. Don't leave a single one behind. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip." Chapter 1159. Yes, your disciple obeys. Dozens of monks of various appearances stepped out from behind Great Master Changgung, weapons in hand. Using their lightness skills, they made their way up the mountain. It was obvious that the martial arts of these disciples of the Dharma protectors were much better than the monks who had cleaned up the disciples of the various sects. After the disciples of the Dharma protectors left, Great Master Changgung waved his hand again and said, "All disciples, listen to my orders. Form a straight line from the bottom of the mountain and search every corner carefully. Do not miss out on anything out of the ordinary." Yes, your disciple obeys. The remaining disciples of the Dalan Temple distanced themselves from each other and made their way up Yao Mountain step by step. From the looks of it, they were no different from the disciples of the various sections. They all had their heads lowered as they searched for copper coins. Help! The monks of the Dalan Temple are killing people. Not long after, a series of screams rang out from the top of Yao Mountain. Although the screams came a little late, they still came. At the foot of Yao Mountain, there was a huge crowd of people. It was like a market. Everyone's faces were filled with joy and vigilance. That, combined with the ambition in their eyes, formed a complicated expression. Everyone had heard the screams from the top of the mountain. There were many familiar voices among them, but most of them gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. They looked at the tents and wooden huts at the foot of the mountain with hatred in their eyes. On top of Yao Mountain, the disciples of the four immortal Tao sects searched the mountain in full swing. At the foot of the mountain, there were many more sects than the four immortal Tao sects. The sky was dark. At the foot of Yao Mountain, the four immortal Tao sects had already cleaned up the corpses that had been killed on the mountain. The corpses were thrown carelessly on the ground. Those that belonged to family members or sects were taken away by people crying to the heavens. Those that had not been claimed were left lying there. However, these corpses were no longer even passers-by. Who would care? On Mount Yao, the disciples were holding torches in their hands. The torches looked like specks of starlight. Not far from the foot of the mountain, a torches that looked like a river of stars appeared. At the front was a hale and hearty old man, holding a sheathed padao in his hand. Beside him, there were several other people who also looked dignified. Looking behind him, there were thousands of people, all dressed in martial attire, holding torches in one hand and weapons in the other. Their anger soared to the sky as they looked at Yao Shan and followed behind the old man. The procession hadn't even reached the foot of Yao Mountain yet, so it had already attracted the attention of the crowd. Many people whispered, "What is old Master Shang doing?" He was a renowned figure in the Jianghu. How many years had it been since he last appeared? Since you're here today, do you have something important to tell me? That's right. Old Master Shang is a man of virtue and prestige. In the past, many things in the Jianghu were decided by him. It must be because he saw how rampant the four immortal Dao sects were, that he represented the entire martial Dao and wanted to seek justice from the immortal Dao. After the martial arts convention of the incense cult, the people in the Jianghu had a general understanding of the immortal Dao and martial Dao. It was easy for them to talk about it now. Just as the crowd expected, old Master Shang led the crowd to the campsite between the clouds and the water. The disciples of Between the Clouds and the Water were shocked when they saw the flood of people. Before they could get close, someone had already turned back to report. The person guarding the entrance took a few steps forward and stopped the crowd, saying, "In front of you is our campsite between the clouds and the water. Heroes, please stay." When old man Shang heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. This is the territory of Yao Shan, the heart of the Central Plains. This old man is not talented, but after roaming the Jianghu for so many years, I've never heard of Yao Shan becoming the private territory of some sect or sect. Who are you? How dare you say that? The disciple was stunned and sneered. That brat Yu has eyes, but doesn't recognize Mount Tai. This is the old Master Shang of a famous martial arts family in the Central Plains. He's more than 70 years old this year, and is old enough to be your grandfather. How can you speak so rudely? The disciple frowned and thought for a while. He cupped his hands and said, "Old Master Shang, it's late now. May I know why you're here?" "Nothing. I just have something to discuss with your sects by Zhangmen." The disciple smiled and said, "Old Master Shang, it's late now. Please go back. Tomorrow, I'll report to my sects by Zhangmen and invite you over for a chat. What do you think?" This disciple of Between the Clouds and the Water was so polite that old Master Shang couldn't get angry. He coughed and said, "I have something important to discuss with Bai Zhangman. Little brother, you'd better go back and report it." "That's right. Hurry up and report it. Otherwise, we'll rush into your camp Between the Clouds and the Water. I'm afraid it'll be bad for you Between the Clouds and the Water." Someone boldly shouted from behind, "Who dares to rush into my camp Between the Clouds and the Water?" A loud shout came from not far away. It was Bai Yinxio's voice. Everyone looked up. Sure enough, the beautiful Bai Yinxio was walking slowly in the light. Behind her were three old men in Taoist robes. "I'm Shang Xuanzi. Is that Bai Zhangmen Between the Clouds and the Water?" Old Master Shang cupped his hands and asked, "I am Bai Yinxio. May I know why old Master Shang is looking for me?" Bai Yinxio smiled. Seeing Bai Yinxio in person, old Master Shang was a little hesitant. But looking at the people behind him, he seemed to have gathered his courage and said, "I've been elected as a representative by the 104 sects in Jianghu. I'd like to ask for an explanation from the four immortal sects led by Between the Clouds and the Water." Old Master Shang, what explanation do you want from us?" Bai Yinxio asked, as if she already knew the answer. The immortal sects are admired by all in Jianghu. During the Wulin assembly of the incense sect, we martial sects already know the gap between us and the four immortal sects. Therefore, we've always followed the four immortal sects' lead. However, this magic treasure of Mount Yao is a gift from the heavens. Only the virtuous can possess it, and this virtuous person doesn't necessarily have to be a member of the immortal sects. We martial sects should also have this right. But now, not only have the four immortal sects surrounded Mount Yao like an iron bucket, none of the other sects in Jianghu are allowed to approach. Moreover, just now the four immortal sects were ruthless and killed countless martial sects on Mount Yao. This kind of behavior, how can we martial sects accept it? I understand. Bai Yanqiu smiled. But what do you think, old Master Shang? Old Master Shang waved his hand. Bai Zhangmin, you're wrong. This isn't my idea alone. It's the joint idea of all 104 sections. It's all the same. Let's hear it, old Master Shang. It's nothing much. It's just that we martial sects want to be treated the same as the four immortal sects. First, we'd like to ask the four immortal sects to give us some space on Mount Yao. Second, we'd like to send people up the mountain with the immortal sects, search for the magic treasure together. Bai Yanqiu smiled faintly. But what if we find the magic treasure? What should we do? Naturally, it'll belong to whoever finds it. Old Master Shang laughed. Does Bai Zhangmin have other ideas? Bai Yanqiu shrugged. I can't think of anything at the moment. It's just that the Jianghu has always had a rule of killing and robbing. If you pick up a magic treasure, but don't have the fortune to use it, and are killed, who will it belong to? Naturally, it'll belong to whoever finds it. Old Master Shang didn't say anything. Instead, a man beside him spoke up. I don't know which sect's leader this is, but if it's as you say, then wouldn't the entire Mount Yao be in a state of carnage again? Countless deaths and injuries? Bai Yanqiu smiled. That's better than only the four immortal sects controlling Mount Yao and not letting us go up the mountain to search for the treasure. The man gritted his teeth and looked at the people behind him. He mustered up his courage and said. Bai Yanqiu was about to speak when he heard someone behind him say angrily, "What kind of dirty people are these? With your cultivation, you want to covet the Mount Yao immortal abode?" Bai Yanqiu was shocked. Before he could look back, he saw a person fly up from behind him and stop 3 feet in the air in front of Bai Yanqiu. It was Taoist Master Hao Yun. Taoist Master Hao Yun had a fiery temper and was never afraid of trouble. At this time, when he heard the condemnation of people who were like ants in his eyes, he was already impatient. Without waiting for Bai Yanqiu to finish speaking, he took out a small, flute-like magic weapon from his arms and floated into the air. He scolded, "If you can borrow this attack of mine, I'll make the decision to let you go up the mountain." As he spoke, he didn't wait for the others to speak. He made a hand seal and injected his true qi into the magic weapon. Suddenly, the magic weapon emitted a fiery red brilliance. Taoist Master Hao Yun was stunned. His hand paused for a moment, but then he waved his hand. The magic weapon drew a semicircle in front of Taoist Master Hao Yun, and a dense number of fireflies flew out. As if they had intelligence, they floated towards Old Shang and the others. Ow! Bai Yanqiu saw Taoist Master Hao Yun floating in the air and knew it was bad. Just as he shouted a word, Taoist Master Hao Yun had already made his move. Seeing the countless sparks flying out, Bai Yanqiu's face showed surprise and a bitter smile. Seeing this, Old Man Shang's snow-white eyebrows furrowed. He didn't understand what these sparks were. When one of the sparks flew in front of him, he stretched out the sheathed machete in his hand, wanting to block it. Who would have thought that the sparks didn't seem to be very powerful in the air? After being blocked by the scabbard, a crisp "pa" sound rang out and it exploded in the air. Once again, it formed a firework-like shape that enveloped Old Shang. This time, it was different from before. It was even faster. Before Old Shang could react, the tiny sparks had already hit his body. The sparks were similar to the fire talismans that Zhang Xiaohua was used to using. When they landed on Old Shang's body, they immediately ignited his clothes, skin, hair, and so on. Even the scabbard was ignited by a few sparks. Not only that, the sparks seemed to be poisonous. When they landed on his skin, it was incomparably painful. Even Old Shang couldn't withstand it. With a scream, Old Shang threw away the scabbard and hurriedly wiped his face with his hand, wanting to extinguish the sparks. Please cast a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a collection, a tip. Chapter 1160. However, how could these sparks be extinguished by hand? Just as Old Master Shang's hand touched the sparks, his hand was immediately ignited. A sharp pain came from his hand again. Old Master Shang involuntarily rubbed his hand against his body. As a result, his body was also on fire. Ah, save me! Save me! Old Master Shang's entire body was in sharp pain. He unconsciously jumped up on the spot, his hands grabbing everywhere, trying to find someone to save him. However, at this moment, how could there be people around him who were unharmed? It wasn't just around him. Within a radius of 10 feet around Old Master Shang, there were about 100 people. At this moment, they were all howling and frantically trying to extinguish the fire on their bodies. The more clever ones had already laid down on the ground and rolled violently, hoping to extinguish the fire with their wings. Ha ha ha. Seeing this scene, Taoist Master Hao Yun, who was in midair, laughed loudly. He turned around and said, "Junior brother, did you see this? My raging flame flute actually has such power. I'm looking forward to it." Taoist Master Hao Yu and Taoist Master Hao Feng also didn't hide their whereabouts. They leaped up and flew to Taoist Master Hao Yun's side. They cupped their hands and smiled. "Congratulations, senior brother, for your great improvement in magic power." It's nothing, it's nothing." Taoist Master Hao Yun waved his hand and said, "How is it that my magic power has improved? It's just that the heaven and earth vital chi here is abundant. Our magic tools can display their power." "Oh?" Grand Wind stared blankly for a moment, then immediately understood. He also laughed out loud. "That's right. I was just wondering. According to the secret manual in our sect, our magic tools are incomparably powerful, like the bright moon. But when we use them, they're like fireflies. So it's because of the chi of heaven and earth." "Stupid, stupid." As he spoke, he also took out a small awl and waved it in front of him. With a crackling sound, a net flashing with lightning formed in front of the awl. "Go!" Taoist Master Hao Feng pointed with his hand. The net flew directly towards where Taoist Master Hao Feng pointed. There was a group of martial artists who had followed Old Master Shang and the rest here. When they saw Old Master Shang and the rest on fire, they hesitated, not knowing whether to run away or go forward to help. The flashing lightning net grew bigger and bigger in the abundant origin energy of heaven and earth. The lightning arcs also became thicker, and there were faint sounds of wind and thunder. By the time it reached the group of people, it had already grown to about 50 feet and was about to envelop them. When everyone saw this, they were already terrified. Some took out their weapons in an attempt to defend themselves, while others turned around in an attempt to escape. However, no matter how much they resisted, the net enveloped them all. Immediately after, a crackling sound similar to beans being fried sounded. About 40 to 50 people died on the spot before they could even let out any screams. "Ha ha ha, as expected. My lightning awl is actually so powerful." Taoist Vast Wind stood in the air and laughed wildly. He turned his head and said, "Senior brother, don't you want to try your lightning hammer?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." The nearby Taoist master, Hao Yu, also seemed to be unable to restrain his curiosity. He reached into his bosom, wanted to take out his magic tool. At this moment, a buzzing sound came from the top of Yao Mountain. Taoist master Hao Yu did not have time to take out his lightning hammer, nor did he have time to chase after the group of people who had already scattered. He immediately turned around and looked at Yao Mountain. When he saw the beautiful scene above Yao Mountain, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Above Yao Mountain, about 100 feet above the originally pitch-black sky, there was an extremely small dot of light that was faintly emitting a trace of light, gradually appearing in the sky. The buzzing sound was coming from that dot of light. It was getting louder and louder, more and more deafening. Immortal Mansion? Taoist Master Hao Yu was stunned for a moment, then became ecstatic. His heart felt as if it was about to fly out. Just as he was about to fly forward, a palm pressed down on his shoulder. Taoist Master Hao Yu also suppressed his excitement and said, "Junior, brother, don't be anxious. It's still early." Bai Yinxiu, who was standing behind the 3 Taoist masters, was also extremely excited. Seeing that the immortal mansion that she had been planning for so long was about to appear, her palms also slowly became sweaty. Not only were the three Taoist masters between the clouds and the water attracted by the strange scene in the sky, even the disciples of the various sects who were previously shocked by Taoist Master Hao Yu and Taoist Master Hao Yu's thunderous methods gradually stopped in their tracks. Their mouths were wide open as they looked at the sky above Yao Mountain. The only ones who were not surprised were Old Man Shang and the others who were killed by the raging flame flute and the lightning all dead. The same scene also appeared in various other places of Yao Mountain. In the camp of the School of Fragrance, Nanjing, he had already led Peacock and the others to the front of the wooden house. Shu Qing and Shu Jie, the two grand elders, soared into the air, unable to hide the excitement on their faces as they quietly watched. In the camp of the Dalan Temple, Grandmaster Chang Gung, Great Master Chang Gung, and Grandmaster Chang Xing clasped their hands together and stood there respectfully. The dot of light in the night sky was a little brighter. Although the fiery red light was still weak, it faintly reflected Grandmaster Chang Gung's indescribable expression. On the contrary, Grandmaster Yuan Dao and the others were still sitting under the tree, as if they had nothing to do with the immortal mansion. In the westernmost camp of the Righteous Alliance, although they had the largest number of people, there was no one from the immortal mansion. Alliance Master Zhang Sen also stood in the open space, his eyes first looking at the light, then turned to the south of Yao Mountain. His face was slightly red. No one knew what he was thinking. Not long after, the dot of light in the sky of Yao Mountain grew larger, slowly becoming the size of a fist, then the size of a boulder. The blood-red light was like countless sharp swords that split the night sky. The red light was like a burning flame, boiling and rotating in circles, illuminating the night sky. Heaven and Earth's Yuan Qi, the previously scarce Yuan Qi of heaven and earth, rushed in all directions along with the light. It was even stronger than the previous hurricane, blowing the trees of Yao Mountain askew, almost causing sand and stones to fly everywhere. The buzzing sound that accompanied the appearance of the blood-red light never stopped. Not only did it get louder and louder, but it also gradually became rhythmic. If one listened carefully, wouldn't it be the sound of war drums? But at this time, the tens of thousands of people at the foot of the mountain were all holding their breaths, watching with rapt attention. Who could tell in detail? A passage to the immortal realm. It was unknown who was the first to come to a realization. His figure flashed, and he was about to rush forward, wanting to find the best position before the so-called passage appeared. It didn't matter that this person moved, but the people around him also came to a realization. None of them were fools, and their daily cultivation of Qigong was no worse than the people around them. In an instant, these people all rushed forward. It didn't matter that this group of people moved, but the people around them all came to a realization. Hurry, hurry, who knows how big that passage is? Who knows how long it will appear? As long as we get to the front, we'll definitely have a chance. This was what almost everyone was thinking. But at the foot of Yao Mountain, almost all of the famous people of Jianghu had come. Tens of thousands was a small number, and who knew how many people secretly hid at the back because they didn't have the qualifications to go forward. Now that the passage to the immortal realm was about to open, who could still be reserved? Like a swarm of bees, they squeezed toward Yao Mountain. Don't block my way. Get out of the way. Almost all of them said the same thing. It wasn't clear who made the first move, and it wasn't clear whether this person's saber was aimed at the person in front of him or the sword was aimed at the person beside him. In just a moment, that sword or saber became the fuse that ignited the frenzied slaughter. And this slaughter seemed to be able to spread. From a certain point, it rapidly spread in all directions. As the slaughter spread, the wong-wong sound from the ball of light also became hurried, up and down, with a cadence. First, it vibrated with the sound of slaughter, and after an unknown amount of time, the sound of slaughter actually matched the wong-wong sound. Ah, ah. One after another, miserable screams rose and fell, becoming the melody of the wong-wong sound. One person was killed, and before the blood-dripping sword could be pulled out of the person's body, The person holding the sword had his head smashed flat by a strange weapon. Both of them lay on the ground, dead as can be. However, under the illumination of the blood-red brilliance, the blood that flowed from the bodies of the two people, like the disciples of the various sects who were killed on Yao Mountain, seeped into the ground and disappeared without a trace. This kind of abnormality, even in the daytime, may not be noticed, let alone in the blood-red night. On Yao Mountain, the blood-red brilliance was dazzling, like the setting sun in the west. On Yao Mountain, the heart-wrenching sound was like the sound of war drums in the battlefield. And below Yao Mountain, tens of thousands of people were killing each other, miserable screams, and endless blood. This was the main melody of sorrow. Greed, savagery, cunning, and other kinds of human nature that were never revealed before were revealed one by one at this moment, completely annihilating everyone's reason. Almost everyone forgot why they were waving their sabers, and only mechanically, involuntarily thrusting the weapons in their hands, as if this was the only reason for their existence in this world. A ball of blood-red light, a blood-red mountain, a burst of blood-red sound, a blood-red night, and also a blood-red human nature. In front of the campsite between the clouds and the water, Hao Yun and the other two perfected masters stood in the air and said, "What a tragedy!" Hao Yun and the other two perfected masters killed Old Shang and the others, and resisted the temptation of the ball of light in front of them, and suppressed their impulse to rush over. Just as they were whispering to each other, they saw countless martial artists behind them, rushing up Yao Mountain. They did not dare to be careless, and called out to Bai Yinxiu, rose into the air, and threw the jade talismans that they had prepared long ago on the ground one by one. If it were any other day, they would not be willing to waste them like this. But at this moment, with such abundant qi of heaven and earth, they were not stingy with these little jade talismans. As the four of them flew over on the side of the campsite between the clouds and the water, a faint layer of yellow light gradually rose up, blocking the group of people outside the light, and no matter if they used weapons or lightness skills, they could not get past it. And the people behind were still rushing up, and the people in front had nowhere to go. They could only turn around and point their weapons at the people coming. Only then could they save their own lives. Amitabha Buddha, a faint Buddhist chant sounded in the air, attracting the attention of Hao Yun and the others. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. Chapter 1161. The commotion at Yao Mountain was earth-shattering. Moreover, it was in the hinterland of the Central Plains, so it had long attracted the attention of countless people. However, the people of the pugilistic world had long since noticed and surrounded the entire Yao Mountain. Even if the other factions wanted to, they were unable to do so. Far away at Misty Peak in Pingyang City, Zhang Xiaohu, who had received his disciples' report, stood at the peak and watched from afar. He was slightly excited when he saw such a beautiful scene. Great Sect Master, could this really be the passage to the celestial realm? Yao Mountain is very close to Misty Mountain Villa. Great Sect Master, should we? Hu Yini narrowed his eyes. His clenched fists trembled slightly as he tried to suppress his excitement. Hee. Elder Hu, should we go to Yao Mountain to join the fun? Let's see if there's any celestial fate there. Zhang Xiaohu took a deep breath. His eyes were still fixed on the ball of light at Yao Mountain. Yes, not just me, but the others. I'm afraid they all have the same idea. Hu Yini looked around and smiled. All of you have the same idea? Zhang Xiaohu forced his gaze away from the ball of light. He turned around and looked at the others. Although there was no red light on their faces, their eyes were shining with a faint red color. Great Sect Master, I also have the same idea. Wenwenhai was Zhang Xiaohu's master, so he was the first to answer. Elderly, you want it too? Hee, Great Sect Master. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. Look at the situation. If there really is a staircase in the air, how can I not be tempted? Li Jian chuckled. If a copper coin fell in front of you, Elderly, would you bend down to pick it up? Zhang Xiaohu suddenly asked. Copper coins? Li Jian, who was looking into the distance, was stunned. He looked away and smiled. Why would I pick up that thing? Then what about a tale of silver? If there's no one around, maybe I'll pick it up. If there's someone around, I can't afford to lose face. Li Jian laughed. Then, what if it's a gold ingot? Let's think about it. Li Jian somewhat understood what Zhang Xiao meant. Everyone, you've all heard Elder Li's answer just now. To Elder Li, a copper coin is something that he would never pick up, regardless of whether there's anyone around. As for a tale of silver, if there's someone around, he's afraid of losing face and won't pick it up. If it's a gold ingot, I have to think about it. I don't know if Elder Li would pick it up. Pick it up? Why not? That's all wine money. Lu Qingyang shouted. Ha ha. Everyone laughed. After everyone finished laughing, Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and laughed again. However, if these things were placed 6 years ago, my attitude would be completely different from Elder Li's. For copper coin, I would think about whether or not there's anyone around. For a tale of silver, please. Do you know that when I was a bodyguard at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency, I only had a monthly salary of 6 maces. 1 tale of silver. How could I not give up my face and pick it up? As for a gold ingot, I don't need to think about it like Elder Li. If it's placed in front of me and someone tries to steal it from me, I'll pull out a knife. Huh? Everyone laughed. Everyone thinks that with the same few things, why would he make a different choice if he sees someone different? Moreover, if there's a gold ingot and Elder Li is on the side thinking about it, there's a few people like me who want to steal it. Tell me, who will be safe and sound in the end? Without waiting for everyone to speak, Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, there's no need to think too much about it. It would definitely be Elder Li. Even if my martial arts are high, I can't stand against someone with even higher martial arts than me. Only those who don't plan to steal from the beginning have the chance to live in the end. Then does everyone know why Elder Li didn't steal it? Zhang Xiaohu asked again. Second brother doesn't lack money. If he wants to drink wine, someone will give it to him. Lu Qingyang shouted. Haha, Elder Lu is right. It's because Elder Li doesn't lack money and knows the consequences of taking the gold ingot that he stopped to consider whether he should take it or not. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Maybe Elder Li saw that I was also coming to pick it up and didn't dare to take it. Exactly. Big Gang Leader is a person of the immortal Tao. This old man is no match for him. It's better to avoid him, Li Jian said with a smile. Then, what if the gold ingot was exchanged for the immortal mansion? Zhang Xiaohu suddenly said. Li Jian was silent. Obviously, he wanted to steal it. But in Zhang Xiaohua's eyes, this immortal mansion? Elder Li, what do you think? If he were to steal it with you, what do you think your chances are? Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Elder Immortal's ability is not something I can guess. However, I don't even have a 5% chance. Li Jian was very honest. This is very obvious. Everyone, Elder Li has to consider the consequences of a gold ingot and won't rashly pick it up. But for an immortal mansion, Elder Li won't consider it at all. That's because the immortal mansion has exceeded Elder Li's expectations, or can satisfy Elder Li's desire to set foot on the immortal Tao. So he doesn't care about the consequences. And Xiaohua is an expert of the immortal Tao. He treats the immortal mansion the same way Elder Li treats the gold ingot. He considers a lot. He knows that there are many experts like him, or even experts stronger than him who want to steal it. He doesn't dare to act rashly, and Elder Li doesn't know this. If he wants to steal it, the consequences will be the same as me stealing the gold ingot. But didn't Elder Immortal say that he wants this immortal mansion? Hu Yuni asked curiously. That's because he didn't consider the previous matter. Now he has considered it clearly and has already gone to the south to start his sect. Elder Immortal isn't going. If we go, wouldn't we be courting death? Du Feng and Ding Chao cried out in alarm. Isn't that so? Everyone should guard the villa tightly. Our Misty School has its own immortal Tao inheritance. As long as there's a chance, everyone will be able to set foot on the immortal Tao. There's no need to be confused by the scene in front of you. Zhang Xiaohu said, moreover, our Misty School's calamity hasn't passed yet. Jingyi of Chuanxiang cult just sent a disciple to ask our Misty School's deputy gang leader Ming or deputy gang leader Ing to go to Yaoshan. They must have discovered the abnormality of our Misty School and sent someone to test us. We still have the energy to deal with this crisis. Yes, big gang leader. We will remember. Everyone bowed and saluted. That's right, gang leader. An unknown voice rang out. If Elder Immortal comes across copper coins, silver ingots, and gold ingots, would he do the same as Elderly? Would he completely ignore them? This. Zhang Xiaohu was really a loss for words. He thought for a moment and laughed. This. When Xiaohua comes back, I'll ask him on your behalf. In the dark, Zhang Xiaohu pursed his lips and thought to himself, this. Do you still need to ask? Let alone gold ingots and silver ingots. He wouldn't even let go of a single copper coin. Far to the north of Yaoshan, Zhang Xiaohua, who had concealed himself in midair, was flying towards Pingyang City. He did not know that his second brother had already preached him to the Misty School's higher-ups as a role model. His attention was caught by the strange phenomenon in his divine perception. What's going on? Could it be that there's a fundamental change in the chi of heaven and earth? Why are there more and more of them? Moreover, this wind seems to be slightly warmer. It's far from the weather of autumn. No, this wind is obviously caused by the chi of heaven and earth. As the wind blows, the chi of heaven and earth is flowing in all directions. Could it be that there's something happening at Yaoshan again? Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He looked as far as he could, but he was still very far away from Yaoshan. Even though the ball of light above Yaoshan was 10 feet in size, Zhang Xiaohua still could not see it. Perhaps, should I hurry up a little bit? If there's something happening at Yaoshan, won't I miss it if I'm late? Zhang Xiaohua took a deep breath. His nose and mouth were filled with the freshness of the chi of heaven and earth. He formed a spell and flew towards Yaoshan at lightning speed. On the south side of Yaoshan, Hao Yunjinren raised his head and narrowed his eyes. From the west side of Yaoshan, 3 old monks wearing kasayas were flying towards him slowly. They were still far away, but the sound of chanting could be heard. It was as if they were right beside him. Hao Yunjinren glanced at Hao Yu and Hao Feng. Just as he was about to step forward, he heard a sharp voice. Fellow Taoist, you look very unfamiliar. How should I address you? Hao Yunjinren sucked in a breath of cold air and turned his head again. He saw 2 old women with white hair, dressed in palace attire, flying towards them from the east side of Yaoshan. Dalan Temple's Master Yuan Dao, Master Yuan Ming, and Master Yuan Wu. Priestess Shu Qing and Priestess Shu Jia. Between the clouds and the water, Hao Yunjinren, Hao Yu, and Hao Feng. They had all gathered at Yaoshan. Apart from the Misty School, the remaining elders of the other 3 sects had all appeared at Yaoshan. When Taoist Hao Yu and Taoist Hao Feng saw this, they formed hand seals and also came to Taoist Hao Yun's side. The 3 of them looked at each other, and from each other's eyes that reflected a bloody light, they understood each other's intentions. Then, the 3 of them stood back to back in the air, coldly looking at the people coming from the 2 directions. Unexpectedly, Master Yuan Dao and the others didn't immediately speak when they arrived in front of Hao Yu. Instead, they flew past them and directly arrived in front of Shu Qing and Shu Jia. Master Yin Wu put his palms together and said with an indescribable tone, "It's actually 2 nuns. How rare. I didn't think that after 30 years, I would still have the opportunity to meet you." Shu Jia also didn't hesitate. She swung the small whip in her hand, making a pa sound, and replied, "Of course. My priestess has always been clear about gratitude and grudges. We're not like some people who always talk about being merciful and saving the common people. Naturally, we have to live longer than others." "Oh, that's right, Master Yuan Dao. Don't you see that there are so many Jianghu juniors killing each other under your feet? You don't want to extend a hand and meddle. Even if you can save 1 or 2, you'll gain a lot of merit. It's much better than meddling in other people's affairs in the past." Junior's sister, Shu Qing, berated from the side, but flew in front of Master Yuan Dao and said with a smile, "We haven't seen each other for many years. Have you been well, Master Yuan Dao. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote recommendation and monthly. Chapter 1162. Master Yuan Dao also flew past Master Yuan Wu and landed in front of Nun Shu Qing. He bowed and said, "It's all right. How are the two of you?" "It's all right. It's just that the chi of heaven and earth has dried up. We're struggling at death's door, unable to rest in peace. Now that there's such an opportunity, we have to come and take a look. Could it be that the three masters have the same intention? Ba, we're also mortals struggling at death's door, unable to rest in peace." "Nun, what are you doing here? What are we doing here?" Hee, I didn't expect the enlightened monks of the Dalan Temple to have such thoughts. No wonder, no wonder. That Master Yuan Dao was stunned and asked curiously, "No wonder what?" "No wonder our sect master specifically told us to look at the big picture before we came. I've always been puzzled. Only when I saw the masters did I understand." "Nun, you said exactly what I'm thinking. Our abbot Changsheng also told us the same thing. There's really nothing we can do." Master Yuan Wu replied to Nun Shu Qing. Nun Shu Qing disagreed and turned to look at Taoist Hao Yun and the others. She said, "We seem to have neglected our friends from the Shindao sect." Taoist Hao Yun saw this, and his body moved slightly, flying half a foot in the air. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm between the clouds and the water. Hao Yun greets my friends." "Between the clouds and the water?" Nun Shu Jie was stunned and immediately laughed. "I thought it was some old friend, so it's actually the unknown between the clouds and the water. How laughable." Taoist Hao Yun's face was also ugly, showing slight anger. But after his fingers moved slightly, he relaxed and said with a fake smile, "There used to be a so-called Shindao sect, but it was destroyed by our allies in the immortal Dao and no longer exists. Now, there's only between the clouds and the water. There are many sects in the Jianghu. It's normal for them to be destroyed. Who would think about who destroyed them? Look at the Misty School. Didn't they return to the Jianghu and set foot on the immortal Dao?" "What? Someone from the Misty School set foot on the immortal Dao? Is it Junwei?" Taoist Vast Wind asked in surprise. Junwei had fallen a long time ago. I don't even know when it happened. How could it be him? Nun Shu Qing said disdainfully, then turned to ask Nun Shu Jie, "Junior sister, it seems when Junwei fell, Great Master Yuan Tian had already passed away." Tribulation Master Shu thought for a moment and nodded. "That's right. Great Master Yuan Tian passed away early. He died from his injuries. Junwei forcefully broke through from martial arts in a Dao and accidentally went mad. He ignited the true fire in his Dantian and burned his internal organs to death. What a pity. The Dalan Temple still hasn't found the murderer who killed Great Master Yuan Tian. I wonder if Great Master Yuan Tian can rest in peace in the underworld." Ba, Abbas has misspoken. My senior brother Yuan Tian's Buddhist Dharma is profound, his achievements complete. He went to the Western Paradise, not the 9 Springs. Grandmaster Yuan Wu berated. Those who died unjustly can also go to the Western Paradise? Tribulation Master Shu said curiously. This, I still don't know. I'll have to trouble Grandmaster Yuan Wu to give me some pointers. You? Grandmaster Yuan Wu was furious. He shrugged his shoulders. An array of light flew out from behind him. After flying several feet, it fell down again and hovered above Great Master Vast Wind's head. It was a broadsword that was several times wider than an ordinary sword. What? You can't win, and you want to fight? Tribulation Master Shu sneered and waved the long whip in her hand. Tiny flower petals grew along with the whip and revolved around Tribulation Master Shu. Back then, it was you who were meddlesome. You saved that person and made me unhappy. I chased him for 3,000 miles before killing him. Because of this, I had to wander outside for several years. When I returned to Lingering Fragrance Peak, I still had to be punished by the sect master. Now that I've met you, I want to talk to you, bald donkey. Ignorant which, it was your fault in the first place, and you still want to push the blame onto others. If you didn't injure me, would my Buddhist Dharma be so many years later than senior brother? Come, come, come. I want to see the power of your incense cult's peach blossom whip. It's said that your demon-punishing sword is also a famous magic weapon of the Dawn Temple. I want to experience it. Tribulation Master Shu's voice changed. Her long whip shook, and countless peach blossoms flashed with a bewitching red light and attacked Grandmaster Yuanwu. Junior sister. Tribulation Master Shu Qing opened her mouth, but saw the peach blossoms already flashing. She then sighed and said, Junior sister, don't get angry. Also, don't forget the Sect Master's words. Our focus is still on the Immortal Mansion. You're serious? Yuanwu didn't expect Tribulation Master Shu to attack so suddenly. He was caught off guard. As he flew back, he reached into his pocket and took out a fist-sized alms bowl. He shook his hand and threw it into the air. The alms bowl flipped a few times in the air with its mouth facing down. Grandmaster Yuanwu made a hand seal and hit the alms bowl. With a schwa sound, a thin layer of Buddhist light was emitted from the alms bowl and tightly covered Yuanwu. At this time, countless tiny, peach-blossom-shaped yuan qi balls hit the Buddhist light. With a series of pu-pu sounds, countless beautiful lights were shot out before they were annihilated. As for the Buddhist light, it was also slightly weakened. Seeing that the alms bowl's defense was effective, Yuanwu's heart calmed down. He put his index and middle fingers together and pointed above his head. The broadsword trembled, and the tip of the sword went straight for Tribulation Master Shu's face. Good timing, Tribulation Master Shu shouted. She made a circle with the whip in her hand. The whip immediately turned into a thin thread and wrapped around the broadsword. Hee hee, you really dare. Grandmaster Yuanwu sneered. His index and middle fingers moved slightly again, as if he was using two fingers to form some kind of seal. Then, he pointed forward again. With a "bai" sound, the broadsword suddenly emitted a radiance the length of a finger, rapidly piercing towards the long whip. In the blink of an eye, just as the light of the broadsword flashed, Shu Jie's long whip had already reached it. Pa pa pa! A series of explosive sounds rang out. The light of the broadsword instantly dimmed, and the long whip was about to wrap around the broadsword like silk. Not good. Yuanwu was shocked. He bent his fingers, and the broadsword was like a clever little snake. The entire sword trembled and flew back. Ha ha! Bald donkey Yuanwu, now you know how powerful my fragrant religion is. Eat my whip. Tribulation Master Shu was not lenient. She did not retract the whip that had turned into a thin thread. Instead, she shook her wrist, and several small circles formed by peach blossoms were formed. Following the trajectory of the whip, they spun rapidly and rushed towards Yuanwu. Why would this old monk be afraid of you? While Grandmaster Yuanwu was shocked, he formed hand seals and chanted a few mantras at the same time. The alms bowl hanging above his head shone brightly, protecting Yuanwu firmly. All of the peach blossoms hit that light screen and were like pebbles hitting the water surface, causing ripples before disappearing into nothingness. Good bald donkey, you actually have this kind of method. This old one has underestimated you. Shu Jie seemed to be really angry as soon as the fight began. She waved her long whip, and countless tiny peach blossoms appeared around her. However, this time, the peach blossoms did not escape from the long whip. Instead, with a pa sound, the long whip struck the brilliance sprinkled by the alms bowl. Although it struck the brilliance, it was the same as striking the alms bowl itself. The entire brilliance and the alms bowl shook a few times, almost extinguishing. Quick! Right at this moment, Grandmaster Yuanwu let out a shout like spring thunder. The broadsword that was still suspended in midair earlier, following the direction of his finger, flew swiftly with a whoosh, piercing towards Abbess Shu's throat. The broadsword was extremely fast, causing Tribulation Master Shu to be slightly startled. As she dodged, she shook the whip again, circling around her body. Countless peach blossoms appeared around Tribulation Master Shu's body, protecting her from harm. Tribulation Master Shu Qing stood at the side. Seeing that Tribulation Master Shu's attack and defense were orderly, she knew that there was no big problem for now. She cast her gaze towards Yuandao. Seeing this, Yuandao waved his hand. Ba, Tribulation Master Shu Qing, could it be that you also want to test this old one's cultivation? Of course not. This old one has no grudges with your Dawn Temple. There is no reason for me to fight here. Tribulation Master Shu Qing coldly said. That's good. Yuandao also let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Right now, this old one still has some things to ask the Shindao sex. Oh no, fellow Taoist Hao Yun of between the clouds and the water. Why don't Tribulation Master be my Dawn Temple's witness? Ha, this old one has the same idea, please. Tribulation Master Shu Qing did not hesitate and immediately said. Yuandao nodded and flew to the side. He arrived in front of Taoist Hao Yun and placed his palms together. He loudly said, This old one has a question to ask fellow Taoist Hao Yun. Grandmaster, please speak. I will tell you everything I know. Taoist Hao Yun returned the gesture. Is that so? Yuandao frowned and said, I wonder, has fellow Taoist seen this old one's senior brother, Grandmaster Yuan Tian? Grandmaster Yuan Tian is the previous abbot of your Dawn Temple. How could I not know? Taoist Hao Yun was puzzled. If you say you have seen him, then I have not. I have always been cultivating between the clouds and the water. I rarely ask about the matters of the sect or Jiang Hu. Oh, is that so? Yuandao said, This old one seems to have seen fellow Taoist's magic tool from afar. It looks very similar to the magic tool that hit my senior brother Yuan Tian. I wonder if fellow Taoist can take it out for a look? Taoist Hao Yin laughed. What's so difficult about that? Saying so, he stretched out his hand and took out an item from his bosom. He then opened his palm as if waiting for Yuandao to look. However, when Yuandao put his palms together and looked forward, Taoist Hao Yun waved his hand and threw it towards Yuandao's face. Following Taoist Hao Yun's hand gesture, a fiery red light pierced towards Yuandao's face with incomparable speed. Unfortunately, when the red light pierced Yuandao's face, Yuandao dodged to the side and dodged the light in a flash. Taoist Hao Yun was not surprised when he saw the light miss. He reached for his waist, and a light red jade flute appeared in his hand. Then he shouted, Go! Following Taoist Hao Yun's command, Taoist Hao Yu and Taoist Hao Feng also did not say anything. Hao Yu took out a small hammer, and Hao Feng took out his lightning awl. From the other two sides, they pounced towards Yuandao. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Chapter 1163. The three great masters of the Dawn Temple, Yuandao, Yuan Ming, and Yuan Wu. Reverend Yuan Wu had a grudge with Abbot Shu in his early years. As soon as they met, they fought to the point of no return. Looking at the overflowing sword chi and the numerous whip shadows over there, it was likely that they had already fought to their heart's content. It was impossible to determine the victor in a short time. Thus, only Master Yuandao and Master Yuan Ming were left. He chanted, Ba, this old monk is untalented and wants to avenge the dead senior Yuan Tian. Eat this old monk's move. The exorcism pestle in Master Yuandao's hand was different from what Zhang Xiaohua had seen. The exorcism pestle looked ordinary, but when Master Yuandao activated it with his dermic powers, a thin layer of Buddhist light surged out from the exorcism pestle. Although it was illuminated by the blood-red light, it was still pale white. Seeing the three from Aqua Cloud Club make their move, Grandmaster Yuan Ming did not dare to hesitate. He stretched out his hand and took out an item from his bosom, tossing it into the air. It was a bead the size of an egg. The bead was also strange. When it was thrown into the air, it was only the size of an egg and emitted a weak, pale white Buddhist light. However, when Master Yuan Ming cast a spell, the bead seemed to be blown by the wind. It spun in the air and expanded with the wind. The pale white Buddhist light was also resplendent, and the blood-red light could not be dyed. It actually opened up a space of 1 foot in the blood-red light. Grandmaster Yuanming's face was expressionless as he looked at the three people pouncing towards Grandmaster Yuandao. He pointed his finger, and the bead drew an arc in the air and smashed towards Taoist Hao Feng's head. Molu Pearl? When Taoist Hao Feng saw that the egg-sized bead had shrunk to the size of a wicker basket and emitted Buddhist light, he immediately revealed the origin of the bead. He sneered and said, "I heard that this bead is a famous Buddhist treasure of the Dalan Temple. I've never seen it before. I want to see if it lives up to its reputation." As he spoke, he raised the lightning awl in his hand and activated his magic power. He struck the awl out of thin air. The lightning awl let out a low rumbling sound that was close to the sound of thunder. A ball of bright light emerged from the awl and flew towards the Molu Pearl. When it flew closer, the ball of light suddenly dispersed and turned into hundreds of smaller balls of light. Between each of the balls of light, there were thin lines of light that connected them. It was like a net. At the same time, Taoist Vast Cloud brandished his raging flame flute. A ball of raging flames spurted out from the end of the flute, drawing an arc as it flew towards Grandmaster Yuandao's shoulder. Taoist Vast Moon was even more arrogant. He flew in the air and activated a small hammer in his hand with his magic power. He struck it towards Grandmaster Yuandao's head. With a thunderclap, a lightning-like brilliance emerged from the hammer and flew towards Grandmaster Yuandao. Good timing. Grandmaster Yuandao did not panic. He waved the demon subduing pestle in his hand. The demon's subduing pestle that was as light as a feather immediately stirred up a wave of air. The rich heaven and earth yuan qi passed through the talismans carved on the demon subduing pestle and made a soul-stirring sound as it swatted towards the raging flames. The raging flames that Taoist Vast Cloud struck out were the same as the sparks that burned Old Man Shang to death. However, it was made up of many sparks gathered together. At this moment, the heaven and earth yuan qi was abundant, and the raging flames gradually grew bigger. However, when the gust of wind from the demon subduing pestle that was flickering with Buddhist light blew over, the raging flames were like ordinary flames, flickering. Without waiting for the demon's subduing pestle to hit the raging flames, a light poof sounded and the raging flames were extinguished. At the same time that Taoist Vast Cloud struck the raging flames, Taoist Haoyu's lightning hammer also struck Grandmaster Yuandao's eyes. Lightning was known for its speed, and Taoist Haoyu's strike could be said to have arrived first, which was out of Grandmaster Yuandao's expectations. Fortunately, the demon's subduing pestle in Grandmaster Yuandao's hand was as light as a feather, and he casually waved it in front of his eyes to block it. Cha-cha-cha. A few blunt sounds rang out, as if a few blunt knives had struck an iron rod. The sound was enough to make one's teeth ache. Grandmaster Yuandao's body slightly trembled, and his arms also trembled as if he had exhausted all his strength. The demon's subduing pestle that was as heavy as a mountain also paused in the air, and the Buddhist light was also dimmed by the lightning. Taoist Haoyu was even more unbearable than Grandmaster Yuandao. Although he had only struck out the lightning was extinguished when it came into contact with the demon subduing pestle. As for Taoist Haoyu, it was as if he had been struck by the demon subduing pestle, and he flew back more than 3 feet. Seeing that the demon subduing pestle's attack was effective, Grandmaster Yuandao was overjoyed, and he angrily shouted, "Attack!" Suddenly, Grandmaster Yuandao's eyes widened into the shape of an angry Vajra. His slightly stooped body suddenly expanded, causing his monk's robe to flutter. His arm that was holding the demon subduing pestle also became much thicker. The demon's subduing pestle regained its radiance after receiving Grandmaster Yuandao's power. With a wave of the demon subduing pestle, the Buddhist light flashed in the air, and it rubbed against the dense spiritual energy of the world, creating bursts of explosive sounds. The sounds rang out continuously, and the demon's subduing pestle charged towards Taoist Haoyu. Taoist Haoyu was 3 feet away and had just stabilized his body. He looked at the demon subduing pestle in amazement. Indeed, he never thought that the demon subduing pestle would have such power in Grandmaster Yuandao's hands. Unconsciously, he became angry and shouted, "The Dalan Temple is only SOSO. Watch as I destroy you." After saying that, he clenched his teeth and poured the spiritual energy in his meridians into the lightning hammer. With a flash, a shadow twice the size of the lightning hammer appeared around the lightning hammer. Taoist Hao Yu held the lightning hammer and waved it extremely slowly, as if the lightning hammer was extremely heavy. The shadow was also driven by the lightning hammer, and it drew a string of afterimages in the air. When the lightning hammer stopped, the shadow left the lightning hammer, and with a slight whimper, it faced the demon subduing pestle head-on. Pong! With a series of chaotic sounds, the demon subduing pestle's wave of energy was broken by the shadow of the lightning hammer. It rose several feet, and the surrounding spiritual energy of the world became chaotic. At the same time, a five-colored brilliance flashed, and the shadow of the lightning hammer was also broken by the demon subduing pestle. It turned into countless tiny specks of light, and with extreme brilliance, it dissipated in the air. "Great Master Yuandao, be careful." Nun Shuqing's voice sounded. Great Master Yuandao was startled. Just now, he used all his strength to wave the demon subduing pestle and put all his attention on Taoist Hao Yu. He neglected Taoist Hao Yun, whose flames were destroyed by him. Without looking back, Great Master Yuandao's divine sense swept out, and he was slightly startled. He saw that the raging flame flute in Taoist Hao Yun's hand was now very close to him. It was like a live loach, and it swam to his back. Taoist Hao Yun was not in a hurry when he heard Nun Shuqing shout to expose his sneak attack. He only made a hand seal, and his fingers moved slightly. A faint red brilliance suddenly shot out from the raging flame flute and quickly pierced into Great Master Yuandao's back. The faint red brilliance in the bloody night sky was very dark. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see that it was actually an extremely thin fire needle. Amiba Buddha! Great Master Yuandao was slightly angry. He chanted Buddha's name, and his whole body flashed. A Buddha's light appeared on his body, and after a few flashes, it disappeared again. Chi! The fire needle pierced into the Buddha's light on Great Master Yuandao's body. It was like snow touching fire and gradually melted. Taoist Hao Yun sneered. His left hand secretly made a hand seal for a long time, and suddenly, a faint cold light appeared in the middle of the melting fire needle. A black needle that was even thinner than the previous light needle pierced into the Buddha's light. It was different from the previous light needle. This black needle was very eye-catching in the Buddha's light. The Buddha's light was like a bubble, and the black light disappeared. The black light directly pierced into Great Master Yuandao's chest. Taoist Hao Yun was overjoyed when he saw this. His fingers moved slightly, as if he was controlling the black needle. But this joy only lasted for a moment, and his face revealed a slight surprise. "Good thief." Great Master Yuandao's words were like spring thunder, and he angrily said, "You are really bold. Even if senior brother Yuandao died, it was under such a sinister hidden weapon. How could this old man not notice? You actually used this kind of method. Are you really confessing without being pressed? Quickly return my senior brother Yuandao's life." As he spoke, Grandmaster Yuandao took out his left hand that had been hidden in his monk robe. He held a purple and green box in his hand. The lid of the box had already been opened, and two green and purple lights formed a ring that flowed inside the box. Taoist Master Hao Yun's black needle that was so thin that it couldn't be seen was floating in the ring of light, slightly rotating. Heaven and Earth box? Taoist Hao Yun sucked in a breath of cold air. This is a legendary item. You can even find it in the Dalan Temple. I really admire you. If it wasn't to break your mystic bone needle, my Dalan Temple wouldn't have to spend so much effort to search the entire Jianghu. Unfortunately, I found it too late. I couldn't save my senior brother Yuandao's life. As he spoke, a thunderclap sounded. A light as thin as a gossamer appeared at the back of Great Master Yuandao's neck and directly wrapped around his neck. "How dare you?" an old female voice sounded. Then, countless tiny white lotuses appeared around Great Master Yuandao's body, blocking that fatal light. When Great Master Yuandao turned around, he saw Taoist Taiyu holding the lightning hammer. His face was gloomy, and his gaze was fixed on his left side. On the left side of Great Master Yuandao, Senior Nun Shu Qing was holding a small white triangular flag. On the flag, there were countless white clouds that were as thin as cotton. They were lifelike, and when the flag fluttered, they seemed to have escaped from the flag. The plain cloud white flag? Taoist Taiyu sighed. The incense sect really lives up to its name. This is an ancient divine item. My Shindao sect searched for so many years, but we couldn't find it. Unexpectedly, you guys found it. The Shindao sect is also extraordinary. The ancient divine items, the lightning awl and the lightning hammer, were all obtained by your Shindao sect. I wonder, is the heaven shaking drum in your hands? Before Senior Nun Shu Qing finished speaking, an earth-shattering sound from the side interrupted her. Chapter 1164. Speaking of which, in the air below Yao Mountain, the battle was divided into 3 areas. The one closest to Yao Mountain was the Dalan Temple's master Yuan Wu, an abbess Shu of the fragrance cult. Due to accumulated grievances in their early years, they wielded their magic tools to fight. One used the Dalan Temple's famous weapon, the demon's slaying sword, while the other used the fragrance cult's inheritance, the peach blossom whip. The two of them fought enthusiastically, urging their magic power to maximize the power of the magic tools in their hands. The demon-slaying sword was more than twice its usual size. Talismans faintly flowed on the sword, flashing with different splendor. The splendor radiated to the edge of the broad sword, turning into a faint Buddhist light. This Buddhist light was like a burning flame, growing by a lot. Looking at Abbess Shu's peach blossom whip, it was no longer a small whip. The entire whip was made of peach blossoms, rolling along the whip from time to time. The whip swam in the air, reflecting the color of blood. It was like a blood-red python, incomparably fierce, causing one's heart to tremble. Although Master Yunwu and Abbess Shu were peak figures in the late stage of Qi refinement, and were also famous experts in the immortal puppet era, they had never seen such dense heaven and earth energy in their lives, nor had they ever urged the magic tools in their hands to such power. Although the demon-slaying sword and peach blossom whip couldn't compare to ancient divine tools like the clear sky mirror and lightning hammer, they were still magic tools used by Yu Mingxin and Wan Wuxin. Therefore, in the hands of the two experts in the immortal puppet era, it was really a bit like casting pearls before swine. Therefore, seeing such dense heaven and earth energy that was almost like the ancient immortal Tao recorded in ancient books, and the magic tools in their hands also exerting power beyond their imagination, the two of them couldn't control their emotions. And they really felt that their magic power had increased a lot compared to before, and their divine abilities had also improved by several levels. Therefore, when they used it, they also felt extremely inflated, as if they were walking on the edge of a cliff. If they weren't careful, they would lose control of their magic power. Looking at Master Yuanwu, he waved the demon-slaying sword, holding in his hand like a door knife, directly chopping down. It was an absolute martial art technique. As for Abbess Shu, she even forgot to form the incantation and only held the main body of the peach blossom whip. With a swoosh, she pulled it out. With a loud rumble, the main body of the demon-slaying sword collided with the main body of the peach blossom whip. The peach blossoms were like splashing waves, flying to various places in the air, and the demon-slaying sword also disappeared in an instant, turning into a sword that was much shorter than an ordinary sword, slowly flying towards Master Yuanwu. However, if it was only the collision of these two magic weapons, it wouldn't be enough to attract the attention of Master Yuan Dao and Master Shu Qing. At the same time that the demon-slaying sword collided with the peach blossom whip, The Dalan Temple's master Yuanming's Molu Pearl was like a round moon that was hidden in the sky, suddenly expanding, absorbing all of Master Yuanming's magic power in one go. The expansion far exceeded Master Yuanming's imagination. Master Yuanming was excited, and the incantation between his fingers became more and more obscure. This obscurity revealed his unfamiliarity, and he almost couldn't control it. The Molu Pearl was like a shooting star chasing after the sun, and with a swoosh, it struck towards Master Taoist Hao Feng's lightning all. Master Taoist Hao Feng was shocked. How could he resist such a terrifying power with his current cultivation? Looking at the lightning all in his hand, Master Taoist Hao Feng gritted his teeth and immediately let go of it, spitting out a mouthful of blood onto the lightning all. After absorbing Master Taoist Hao Feng's blood essence, the lightning all shrank instead of expanding, until it shrank to about half of its original size. Then it flew in the air, and like a phoenix nodding its head, slightly trembled 3 times, and 3 layers of thin lightning flashed, wrapping around the Mola Pearl. Unfortunately, these 3 layers of lightning were still unable to stop the Mola bead's attack. With 3 puff 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 sounds, the Mola bead pierced through 3 glistening holes in the lightning net and directly struck the body of the lightning all. And this collision coincidentally happened at the same time as the demon punishing sword and the peach blossom whip. The sound that filled the sky was truly earth-shattering. Not only did Grandmaster Yuan Dao and Senior Nun Shu Jing cast sidelong glances, their figures slightly dodging. Their spiritual senses and eyes all looked over. Even the people under everyone's feet, whose heart meridians were already controlled by the wung-wung sound of the beating drum, woke up from their stupor. They looked at the 2 immortal Dao experts fighting in the air with strange gazes. Grandmaster Yuan Dao wielding the demon-punishing sword and Senior Nun Shu Jing wielding the peach blossom whip were in a more wretched state. Their bodies were greatly trembling, their arms were trembling, and their meridians were trembling as they fell to the ground. As for Grandmaster Yuan Dao, who controlled the Molu Pearl, and Taoist Hao Feng, who controlled the lightning all, were slightly better off. However, their figures were also staggering, traces of blood seeping out of their mouths and noses. This was the backlash from controlling the immortal Dao artifacts. When the earth-shattering sound was heard, the blood-red brilliance in the air above Yao Mountain became even more intense. It was like a pool filled with blood, causing people to feel a burst of vexation in their hearts. It was completely different from the 7 colors in the air above Yao Mountain before. Following the collision of the 4 immortal Dao artifacts, that brilliance also suddenly emitted an even more resplendent brilliance. It was as if something had squeezed its way in. That brilliance strengthened by more than 30%, but these 3 layers were increasingly bloodstained. Ga, a soft sound was heard, followed by Senior Nun Shu Jie's miserable cry. Ah, who are you? That change suddenly appeared when everyone was looking at the brilliance in the air. When Senior Nun Shu Qing turned her gaze back to Senior Nun Shu Jie, Senior Nun Shu's body that had fallen to the ground had already stabilized. An incomparably fast black shadow leapt out from the crowd of Jianghu disciples who were gradually coming to a stop on the ground. Like an arrow leaving a bow, it shot straight towards Senior Nun Shu. In front of the black shadow, there was also a black longsword that still emitted a bright light amidst the blood-red light, stabbing towards Senior Nun Shu's back. That was not the end of the change. As Senior Nun Shu screamed, an angry roar sounded at the same time. Who are you? Beside Master Yuan Ming, who had landed on the ground, there was also a black shadow. Like the sneak attack on Master Yuan Ming, it silently attacked Master Yuan Ming's back. Master Yuan Ming was very alert. When he saw Senior Nun Shu Jie panicking, he immediately formed a spell. The Momo Pearl that was sent flying backwards immediately flew in front of him. A Buddhist light sprinkled down, protecting him completely. Ha! Master Yuan Dao, who was alerted by the two screams, was not alarmed, but laughed instead. He flew forward and stood in the middle of the crowd. Senior Nun Shuqing also had a smile on her face. She flew to Master Yuan Dao's side and waved the plain cloud white flag in her hand. Countless pure, white, tiny lotus flowers enveloped everyone in the air. She laughed loudly and said, "Fellow Taoists of the Tenryu sect, we've been waiting for you for a long time." The two black shadows that attacked Senior Nun Shu Jia and Master Yuan Ming were stunned. They immediately understood that they had fallen into a trap. The two of them looked at each other. One of them went straight up, while the other fell down, wanting to land among the Jianghu people on the ground again. "Since you're all here, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" As Master Yuan Dao spoke, he waved the demon subduing pestle in his hand and slammed it towards the Tenryu sect disciple who was flying up. When the demon subduing pestle hit him, the Tenryu sect disciple's body twisted. In a trance, he left behind an afterimage while his body moved forward another 5 feet. "Sakura?" Master Yuan Dao's pupil shrank. He seemed to be shocked by the black shadow's levitation technique. As for the black shadow that fell to the ground, although no one chased after him, when his body landed on the layers of white lotuses, he could no longer descend. He could only stand there awkwardly. "Is it Garuda?" Senior Nun Shuqing also couldn't confirm. She could only shout in a low voice. At this moment, although Senior Nun Shu Jia and Master Yuan Wu were about to land on the ground, they had already stabilized their bodies. The peach blossom whip and demon slaying sword in their hand were above their heads. Their faces were filled with pride. Apart from them, all the other masters of the Dalan Temple and the nuns of the incense sect seemed to know what was going on. Only Hao Yun, Hao Yu, and Taoist Hao Feng between the clouds and the water had a certain expression on their faces. They seemed to be rather ashamed. "Sakura, this old monk has been preparing for a long time. I've been waiting for this moment. If you didn't want to launch a sneak attack, you might not have fallen into my sex trap." Grandmaster Yuan Dao smiled. At this time, Abbess Shu Jia, Abbess Shu Jing, Grandmaster Yuan Dao, Grandmaster Yuan Ming, and Grandmaster Yuan Wu were using a mysterious formation to trap the two shadows of the Heavenly Dragon sect. Taoist Hao Feng's figure also landed below. He looked at the two black-clothed men of the Tenryu sect who were surrounded. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a person laugh shrilly. "Even if we were to fight one-on-one, you might not be a match for us. Who would care about your ambush?" That voice was indeed the leader of the Tenryu sect, Sakura. Moreover, that voice was still graceful, as if he wasn't nervous at all. It was indifferent, as if he was talking to a common friend. Lord Sakura, if we didn't have this ambush, would you dare to come forward?" The person who said this was Master Yuan Dao. His words were true. Sakura was the most powerful person in the world. His cultivation was supported by the secret technique of the Tenryu sect. Not everyone could resist him. However, when faced with Master Yuan Dao, Senior Nun Shuqing, and the others, he might not be able to win in a single battle. Moreover, the Dalan Temple and the Tenryu sect were gathered here. Even if the Tenryu sect appeared, they might not be able to win. "How can you guess what I'm doing? This kind of boring array formation of yours is nothing more than a small trick to this seat." Disher Tian smiled and extended his body. Like a sparrow hawk soaring into the sky, he charged towards the ground diagonally. The Dalan Temple and the Tenryu sect seemed to have a tacit understanding. The 5 of them should be using some kind of formation. When Sakura moved, Senior Nun Shuqing and Master Yuan Wu also moved. The two of them approached Sakura's back. The two of them made a hand gesture, and the peach blossom whip and demon slayer sword that had gone out of control earlier instantly shrunk to an extremely small size. They attacked Sakura's shoulders from both sides. At the same time, Master Yuan Dao and Master Yuan Ming attacked together. The demon subduing pestle and the Mao Pearl attacked the other Tenryu sect shadow from above and below. "You?" that shadow exclaimed. He had just dodged the demon subduing pestle and was blown by the hurricane brought about by the demon subduing pestle. Before he could stabilize himself, the Mao Pearl hit his back. Instantly, a ray of colorful light flashed on the shadow's back. That shadow directly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was hit by the Mao Pearl and rolled a few times in the air. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.